7:03, I'll call the meeting to order. First order of business is approval of the agenda. I'll mention that the meeting is duly constituted and a quorum is present. May I have a motion? And a second? Discussion on the agenda. I'll just kick one or two things off. What I would like to do is recommend that we move the CAO's report on the community amenity contributions policy until after until after we've discussed the OCP designation bylaw. That is to after the bylaw section, or until after the bylaw section, so that we know where we stand before we start talking about CACs. Everybody jiggy with that?
So a switch, or?
No, just move it till after the bylaw section, so just before 12 correspondence. And for similar reasons, I'd like to move the mayor's report until after the council report. So just swap B and C in section 9 reports.
Sorry, where that one's going, moving to where, sorry?
It's just swapping B and C under section 9. Anybody else?
I have a couple of changes.
Yep.
On page 3, the council reports. Item 2, complaints, there's a short-term rentals, that's in cameras, so that piece would be a strike.
Yes, okay. So you don't need that here in open?
Don't need that here in open.
Okay.
And if we could, just as a substitute, if we could put tree committee. So
Well, that's next.
Well,
Is it another
I'm
item?
sorry, I have another item.
Okay, so that'll be D2.
Yeah, so it'll be 2, and then, and I know you want to squeeze in there somewhere, but under new business, if I could go, 13, number 1, strategic planning session.
Yes. Strat plan sesh. That's 13A, Sean. Anybody else? Good.
Yeah, if we can just have a quick blurb on the council for wildfire discussion.
So that will now be the new 2. So Bain.
I thought the tree
New
committee
3.
was the new 2.
I've got D1 as the tree app and D2 as Ron's tree committee
Yeah, so Fred will be 3.
discussion.
Okay, so you want the tree committee one under council or under committees?
Council.
Council. So that's a different tree thing. So that's the new B2, and the new B3 will be Bain wildfire preparedness.
So that's under council or committees?
Council.
Yes.
Very well. Everybody, without further explanation, fine with putting those in there? Okay. Anybody else? Jim? Norm? You fine? Okay, so Peter?
Additional reason for closing K,
Remind us what K is, please.
negotiations for proposed provision of municipal service from interest of public,
Okay, provision of municipal service.
negotiations with respect thereto.
Fine. Anything else? Peter? No? Okay. As amended, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Oh, sorry. Never mind, don't matter.
Okay, don't matter. And opposed? That carries. Approval of the minutes of previous... No, I'm wrong. I'm thinking of a different public body. This is an unusual one. Public opportunity to comment on the road closure bylaw number 550 of 2018.
There's on-table correspondence that we
This
received.
should have been
in
added during
respect
approval
this.
of the agenda.
Sorry,
All on-table items must be reviewed.
didn't see that one added.
It's already been sent to council. This is
Still
nobody's.
needs to be added, it's on table, it's not
It's-
part of the agenda.
it's in the mayor's
The
report.
agenda went out.
Peter, you're handing out something nobody's seen yet.
You've all seen it.
Oh,
You all
we have
got
seen
the
it.
emails. You all got
okay.
the emails.
Fine. Okay.
So it's just, handing out a paper copy and extras for the gallery if there's some clients.
Okay, so this does not need to go on the agenda? This is part of this agenda item?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so this is unusual. How does this work?
You call for, you described it, this is the time in this meeting where we provided for and advertised for an opportunity for any member of the public to step forward and present their views to council if they feel that they are affected by the road closure bylaw number 550, 2018, which relates to lands at the corner of the Calvin Grove northbound off-ramp, right by the corner of Calvin Grove Way on the right-hand side. So there's surplus land there, which is not being used for any purpose. There's sufficient land to create a lot, to close that portion of land, to do so, and to sell it.
Thanks. And just for council edification, I know the gallery can't really necessarily see it, but it's this unsubdivided portion of trees here. And that is currently village-owned right-of-way, road right-of-way, correct, Peter?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll call for public comment on the proposed road closure bylaw number 550. I'll call a second time for public comment on road closure bylaw number 550. And I'll call a third and final time for public comment on road closure bylaw number 550. Seeing none, I'll move to the next item agenda.
So you should perhaps address the information that was, there was
Fine,
a submission, it was in writing,
Okay.
which is council's aware of.
Okay, fine. So council has seen this, and I'll just quickly summarize.
Would you like me to summarize?
Yeah, maybe you do it because.
Okay. So Elizabeth Hodgson wrote with concerns with respect to access to the, there's an access road below all those lots along Kelvin Grove Way there from the intersection going south, and was concerned that closing off that portion of land at the corner would perhaps block access to that road or inhibit it or infringe upon it in some way. And I rechecked and double-checked and triple-checked, and no, it won't.
That's this here.
The actual road begins after the lands that are to be created, or the lot that is to be created. So it doesn't impact on that access road or any of the infrastructure in or adjacent to that road.
Okay, we'll have the opportunity to discuss this bylaw later on in the agenda. But this is public input that we should properly consider now. So seeing no comments from the floor, and this is the only piece of public comment that we received in writing.
Yeah.
I'll declare that the opportunity for the public to comment on the bylaw is now closed and moved on to the next item on the agenda, which is public participation, 2 minutes per person for 10 minutes total. We have a speakers list, and the first person on the agenda, Fred, you've got your clock there, Philip Marsh.
I'm Philip Marsh. I live at 235 Kelvin Grove, and I've been a property owner here for 30 years. I've served on various village committees here, OCP, highway, secondary suites, parking, etc. I'm here because of my concern on the OCP amendment and what appears to some of us to be an unnecessary urgency to get it passed.
Excuse me 1 second, I'll have to stop you there. The opportunity to comment on the OCP amendment is closed. Council can receive no further information on it.
Not even a public comment from
No,
myself.
no, I'm afraid not. The opportunity for public comment was during the public hearing. If we received this comment, we would have to have another public hearing in which it would be presented, presumably in summary, for the very reason that it is a public hearable item
Okay,
OCPs are one of the few. We can receive no further comment.
okay, can I talk for 2 minutes and not mention OCP?
We'll see where you go.
You'll put us in a very awkward
Okay.
position if there's any input.
Okay, I've been away, I've been working for McMurray for 2 months, so that's why I
Okay,
never.
I appreciate the logistical difficulty, but we have our hands tied by the community charter on this one.
Okay, okay, you tell me if I'm off base then.
Okay, fine.
I think it's the dog days of summer though, and many constituents are vacation apathetic and unavailable. And, okay, I'll go another route there. My particular concern is some things that could be used to fast track or expedite certain developments. I'm not against development. I've always been on record as supporting densification, secondary suites, coach housing, subdivision of lots, etc. However, certain large-scale developments are not a good fit, and the current proposal at Kelvin Road is one of them. Very similar development was proposed in '96, and every single Kelvin Grove homeowner signed a petition against it. And I think it'll be the same this time around. To dump 60 plus more cars daily, entering existing on a steep hairpin turn, crumbling roadway is a recipe for a long-term disaster. And that doesn't even take into consideration disruption and stress to the roadbed during construction. We've already had, as you know, a slide just meters from the proposed entry exit. At the very minimum, the developer should make a proposal for a dedicated southern entry exit off the highway, or subdivide and downscale to 6 or 8 RS1 homes. Considering the potential long-term impact of this issue, I believe that with a few months left in the council's mandate, that Kelvin Grove should be off the table, and it would be just highly principled to leave it to be debated and settled during or after the October civic elections. I don't see, talking to my neighbors, that it's going to be any different this time. I think you're going to have 100% of Kelvin Grove residents opposed to it, just like it was in '96, if there's not major changes, downgraded from 28, 29 units, and coming off, connecting to the hairpin turn there is a no-go. And I was very much involved in it the last time, and we've had meetings, neighborhood meetings on it now, and we're starting again to oppose this development. Okay?
Okay, thanks. That's perfectly acceptable in front of us now, because it's development that is public, development proposal, so the comments are very welcome. Thank you. Next on the list is Vivian O'Keefe.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm not against development. I just want to reinforce, I'm not bringing anything new to the table, I just want to reinforce some of the comments that I heard last week. Firstly, the perception of hazard assessment.
Excuse me,
Yes.
is this about the bylaw amendment?
It is, I'm just commenting on some of the items that were brought up
Sorry.
last week. So we can't,
No,
okay.
I'm afraid not. I wish it were different, but that's what the law says. Because the people who are not here could rightly object that they didn't get a chance to hear it and react to it.
Well, actually, I just wanted to reinforce some of the things that people said
So,
last
yeah,
week.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Because it gave us time to think about it, right? After listening to all the
I
information. I understand.
I fully appreciate that in mega city, where there's developers and the lawyers have lawyers, somebody can review all this stuff and send somebody to the public hearing to make representations because they've been thinking about it for 6 months. It doesn't work like that in Lions Bay, but that's what the law says. And I realize it's a complete shortcoming. It's silly because the public hearing was the first opportunity most people had to even see the thing, let alone vaguely understand or let alone start thinking about it. And the law says that nobody's allowed to speak about it afterwards.
I just find
I'm as
it
incensed as you are.
From a business point of view, that people are going to make a decision that's going to have an impact on us property owners here. You know, many of those points that were brought up last week were very valid, such as increasing.
Oh, no, sorry, but we know what the points are, and they will be considered in our debate, which
Well,
is...
please consider them carefully, because I think for us residents that live here, just whitewashing everything with the same paintbrush, I have
Fully
great
appreciate it.
concern about it.
So I think if you want to stick around, it's a little bit later in the agenda, but what council is allowed to do is discuss it amongst themselves, not debate it, but we are allowed to send in new information. We're also allowed to request information from staff, and that has been happening, and that will all be debated soon, in the next hour. Next on the list, Penny Nelson.
Hi, Chip. It's the first time I've seen you that side of the table in 4 years. So I've been doing this for quite a long time, on the last 4 years, but I would like to say this is the first time that this particular piece of the community charter has been invoked with such force. Because the truth is you can get more information, and then you'd have to have more public hearings, which we actually need on this one. The Flynn-Roe report, or whatever information you've requested from the province about things outside of the village boundary, has not yet come to council. It has not yet come to the public, more to the point, the residents who want to hear this information and who are on holiday at the cabin, entertaining visitors from out of town, as I was for 2 weeks just gone by. Nobody's listening, but isn't that the plan? I'd like to support what Phil Marsh has to say. I believe that there are those of you around this council table, your gut feel is, you're not comfortable, this isn't what you thought it was going to be, it wasn't what you intended it to be even. And I'm here to say that is your gut feel. You do not have to pass this third reading tonight. You do not have to pass this bylaw amendment. And for heaven's sake, do us a favour. If we're going to do it, let's do it right. And this has to do with covenants on title, which to this day have not been mentioned in as many words in a village update, which only 633 email addresses received, which is roughly half of the people who are entitled to vote in October. Now, everybody deserves to have this done. In the history of Lions Bay, since I have been here, typically in summer, we don't expect to be facing this huge kind of impact on our village without having a fair say and a fair hearing. I think it's not Canadian, it's very un-Canadian. You can in fact take new information in, and you can in fact have more public hearings, you just choose not to. And that's my concern. The rush, what's the rush? There is no deadline. There's some sort of imposed deadline here that residents are unaware of. And the people we elected here, some of whom I know fairly well, and the new one, whom I haven't yet met, but he sounds like he's doing a great job. I think the gut feel in this room is, we want to do it right. Covenants on title are not necessary. I spoke to Tofino's planning department yesterday.
Sorry, you're going to have to stop there.
What?
You can't get into something else.
I'm
That's
talking
new
about
information, Tofino.
We
No,
can't
you're-
get new
no, you
information.
can't.
No, sorry,
But
I'm the chair of the
Sorry,
meeting, and I will
sorry.
rule on that. You cannot.
Well,
So-
the community charter says you can, but then you have to have more public meetings, which is exactly
At the
what we
moment,
need.
council is attempting not to have another public hearing. You're fully within your rights to stick around for the debate, listen only, unfortunately, not participate. That's the way it's gone, and see what council will say about that. That is the current. You have no idea what council is going to decide on more public hearings or not. So please don't make any predisposition
I
there.
know what's on the agenda, and that's a public document. I know what got said at the
Council
public
is
meeting.
considering third reading on the document. We're considering it.
And adoption. And that's where...
First, we have to
that's
do a
the
third
problem.
reading. Yeah.
Yes, I know.
So
And
you wanted to know? Sorry.
I have one more question.
Okay. Question is
Because-
fine.
Yes. So what I did and what we've been doing is we go through the public documents, and I would like to know where the first and second reading got passed.
Yes.
Because I couldn't... No, where? Because I couldn't find it. Did it get passed in camera?
No.
No. So on the last vote, just on a point of order here, in the last council meeting when we were in the room, well, I wasn't here, but Neville was here, and he's in Montreal right now. Otherwise, I wouldn't have to do this. Basically, the way that we heard it around the table was that councillors weren't comfortable with that draft. And so it was going to be sent back to the drawing board, which is what was in the village update. But what I'm
But
saying...
you're talking about something from very, very long ago.
No, the last council meeting where this came up on the agenda.
Peter?
You're talking about the DPA regime that was
Yes.
dismissed in April, at the
Mhm.
April 10th meeting.
Mm.
This came back June 19th and was given first and second reading, and a public hearing was set for July 10th at that meeting.
Okay.
So if you look at the minutes of June 19th,
June 19th?
you'll see it there.
Thank you. Okay.
Just to remind us all, the DPA regime was rejected by council as
Yeah, but now we're
unworkable.
just calling it something else.
No, is very different. And as I say, you're welcome to stick around for the debate later.
Well, it's a pity that you're not bringing this item forward on the agenda, given that we're all here to hear it. Because we can do that with council's vote.
Well, I can certainly consider that, whether we want to bring that forward to an earlier stage. Just to answer a question that you had, why is there such a rush? The rush is to get a pent-up demand from about 20 proponents, property owners in the village who would like to subdivide big cottages and get going. That's the rush.
Well, since we're not accepting applications on these at the moment, there's no definitive number that you can actually report on that, because there's no applications, because there's no process yet.
I'm only
So-
talking about people who've spoken to me saying,
Well,
when will it be ready?
With respect, that doesn't count as fact, because until you have those applications in hand, you have no applications.
There's nothing
and
to
there is no
apply for you.
process.
You
Well,
asked me what's the
exactly.
rush, and I'm telling you what's the rush.
There is no rush, because.
I'm
what-
telling you there's a rush.
No, there is an imposed rush. This council is not here to cater to those few people. 20 to 25 is a small percentage of the residents in the village. And just because certain developers do want to move ahead, it doesn't mean we have to rush and make a mistake.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there because you're going off down a rabbit hole. The strategic goals are right there. The strategic goals state that we are encouraging small development in the village for things like keeping our school alive.
You know, Carl, I don't really want to rehash the spin right now, but what I'd like to say.
Okay, thanks. I'll have to.
No, once and
You're
for all.
well over your limit. Thank you.
Once and for all, what I'd like to say is, again, there is no rush to pass this tonight. Let's get it right, because clearly we need to do it right the first time.
Thanks.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, would anybody care to make a motion to move debate on the item forward? I'll ask again.
And jump the queue here.
I mean, we're going to debate it later, so why not debate it now?
Personally, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, we've got the gallery here, and it's,
I think
Fine.
it's a good time to do it.
Fine, okay, so
is that fine with you, Peter? I don't
No.
think there's a,
we've approved the agenda, but we can unapprove and reapprove. So this would be item number 11A, moving, there's no delegations, so moving now, item 5. I'll need a motion. It's moved, seconded. Any discussion? Any particular reason we should keep the agenda order as it is, Peter?
Not that I can see.
No, okay, fine, so I'll call the question. All in favour? And opposed, that carries. So next on the agenda is consideration of third reading and adoption of the official community plan bylaw number 408 of 2008, amendment bylaw number 525 of 2018, with the recommendations that you see in front of you. Rather than call for a motion for third reading and adoption and then discussion, let's have some initial input at this stage. So we're looking at page, what is it, of the package?
Page
139 of the package. So Peter, perhaps you can give us a succinct understanding of where we are and what's brought us to this point.
Okay, as referenced a few minutes ago, the original formulation of the legislative means of dealing with natural hazards in Lions Bay was to do so via development permit areas. And at the April 10th meeting, Council decided that that was not the direction they wanted to go. Instructed staff to see what other means could be put together in terms of dealing with Lions Bay's legal obligations, which are duty to warn and duty of care with respect to persons and development in the face of natural hazards within the community. So there are both common law and legislative obligations that the municipality has. For example, the requirements under the Local Government Act are that one must have mapping references and restrictions, any restrictions on development due to natural hazards noted within the OCP. So in order to meet those objectives, while placing greater emphasis on the existing statutory requirements and legislative powers of the building inspector and the approving officer under both the Community Charter and the Local Government Act, staff put together a new regime which is labeled Natural Hazard Assessment Areas, or NHAAs. They use the same mapping that was provided by Pierre Freely. It's called in the Cordilleran Report. The Cordilleran Report and the mapping have both been updated to reflect natural hazard assessment areas rather than development permit areas. So essentially, if somebody under the Natural Hazard Assessment Area OCP Amendment bylaw, if somebody wants to develop their property, then if they are within a natural hazard assessment area, they must get a natural hazard assessment by a qualified professional. And the guidelines are set out within the bylaw and provide guidance to qualified professionals as well as to staff and to property owners so that they know what is required. They incorporate some of the requirements of the Local Government Act and the Community Charter with respect to covenants. Both those pieces of legislation require that where a qualified professional indicates that there are conditions in order for land to be used safely for the use intended, that those conditions and indemnities in favor of the municipality must be registered in the Land Title Office for the Section 219 covenant. That is a requirement of legislation. It's not something that staff is simply recommending from a legal perspective. We have to do that. So this has been put together to address the municipality's obligations. The municipality has made a policy decision some time ago to provide for new development. As the mayor alluded to, those considerations and priorities and strategic goals are indicated on the poster on the side wall and are incorporated within some of the means by which the policy is being implemented are through the zoning bylaw that was adopted last May. That zoning bylaw provided for densification, provided for cottages, provided for subdivision, and so that was a policy direction that council took last year. This bylaw amendment to the OCP is required in order to bring that policy decision to fruition. We cannot allow new development within the municipality and still meet our legal obligations unless we have a means of dealing with natural hazards that we know about and that are present in our community. So that is what this piece of legislation is intended to address. It has been streamlined somewhat from the DPA regime that we started off with. Many of the conditions and requirements and guidelines within that were streamlined with the assistance of the geoscientist, Mr. Freely. And so it's a little bit easier to read. And we also inserted a number of definitions. The most important of which, in my view, would be the definition of new development. So, new development is defined in this bylaw. I'll just quickly go to it, sorry.
I think council is going to ask that it changes from landscape to portrait. That's one thing that I think you can understand.
Sorry, this is the presentation.
I'll just read it out here. New development means
Okay.
construction of a new building or structure requiring a building permit. And B, there's actually 5 pieces. Construction of a retaining wall over 1.2 meters in height, and something that does that as well. Development requiring a permit under the soil deposit, soil removal, and land alteration bylaw, number 510, which was a third leg of the stool. I don't know how many legs are on the stool, but that's the third leg of the policy decision. Or new development means subdivision, or new development means rezoning.
And there was a subparagraph F to begin with, whereby a temporary use permit for the purpose of short-term rentals would have also required a natural hazard assessment. However, staff is recommending, and I think council agrees, that that requirement will be deleted on third reading, and with a change at the last meeting with respect to the temporary use permit policy related to short-term rentals. Another aspect, one other definition aspect that I should bring to everyone's attention is in the definition of new development, there was reference to construction of a new building or structure requiring a building permit. So new building or structure is also defined and means a building or structure excluding an accessory building or structure that generally contains habitable space and that is newly constructed or being constructed or intended to be constructed, or that is being or is intended to be substantially reconstructed, and shall include a retaining wall as set out in the zoning bylaw. So that's a retaining wall greater than 1.2 meters in height. A pool as set out in building bylaw number 234, 1994 as amended. Or C, an alteration to a residentially zoned building where 1, the footprint of the building is to be increased by 25% or more, or 2, the value of the alteration as specified in the applicable building permit is more than 50% of the replacement value of the building, as determined by multiplying the gross floor area of the building by $300. So what that is saying is that, yes, it's a brand new house, or it could also be a renovation whereby the footprint is being expanded by more than 25%, or the value of the building is greater than 50% as determined by the formula that I read out. Also includes retaining wall and pool. So that's sort of a key important information to understand when one is looking at what is new development and when will a natural hazard assessment be required. Some of the other definitions are more or less just related to hazard assessments and typical, nothing really to call out at this point in time. The other change in here that has been highlighted is at section 10.1.1, whereby we've deleted superfluous wording that related originally to deeming all references in the mapping to be natural hazard assessment areas instead of development permit areas, but that's already been updated now, so the new mapping has been attached to this version presented for third reading, and that wording would be removed. In terms of matters highlighted in my report, the only other change was with respect to the the layout, as Mayor Burr referred to, whether council wishes to have that changed to portrait rather than landscape.
I mean, ultimately, this will become section 10 of the OCP, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's correct.
and we're referring to it today as an amendment bylaw, but ultimately, whatever is decided would become part of the OCP.
Yes. So what follows on the heels of that report is the minutes of the public hearing that was held on July 10th. So there was the introduction by Mayor Burr. I went through the purpose of the bylaw and provided a presentation, which is attached as well in the materials. And then there were a number of speakers who spoke at the meeting, and their responses are summarized within the minutes of the meeting. And this record of the public hearing was prepared by myself and the recording secretary, Carol Lee, and Mayor Burr has certified it as fair and correct after a few amendments. And
Let's
if council
just stop
has
there,
any-
Peter,
okay,
and
yeah.
let me see if council would like to move and second the first two recommendations, which is that the request for decision report that Peter's just given us be received, and that the minutes of the, not the minutes, it's a report of the public hearing, be adopted. So we can get that out of the way. Okay, so I'm seeing nods. So Jim, I'll take that as a motion for the first recommendation, that the request for decision report titled Village of Lions Bay Official Community Plan Designation Bylaw number 408 of 2008, Amendment Bylaw number 525 of 2018, consideration of third reading and adoption dated July 12th be received. Thanks. And a second on that, guy? This is just to receive the report at this stage, nothing more. It's been seconded. Any discussion on that one? Any further requests of Peter on the report? I think I have one small question, Peter, and that was... No, we can discuss that during discussion of the amendment itself. That would be a more appropriate place. So, seeing no discussion, all in favour? And opposed? Nobody opposed? That carries. And then the second one, can I have a motion on that recommendation, which is... I'll read it out. So we can just do a motion in a second, that the report of the public hearing held at Broughton Hall, 400 Central Road, Lions Bay, BC, July 10th, 2017, and certified fair and correct by moi, as chair, be received and adopted by council as the public hearing record. Can I get a motion on that one? It's a motion, and I'll take that as a second. Fred, any discussion?
Should that not be 2018, sorry? July
2018, thanks. And was it July 10th? Good catch.
Yes, it was.
It was July 10th, 2018. The recommendation as amended. Can I get a new motion on that one? Thanks. And a second. Thanks. Any discussion on the amended motion? No? All in favor? Opposed and carried? Okay, so now we will go back to the meat of the matter. You picked the wrong day to give your report.
Don't blame me, buddy.
Well, we're actually now we're in the middle of discussion of the OCP amendment, so you're going to have to cool your heels for a while there, Fire Chief.
Enjoy the atmosphere.
Yeah. Okay, so we've had Peter's report on what we see in this thing, and this is where it starts getting interesting. So I'll just throw it open to the floor without asking for a motion and second on the recommendation yet, and see where we go. No.
Okay. It will come as no surprise that I've had hesitation around this from the beginning, with the initial rollout of the DPA framework to what it's evolved to today. I still have open questions. That's a little guy on my shoulder saying that we still have work to do. That's just the theme of my sense of where things are at right now. After the public hearing, I felt obligated to try and dig a bit deeper and see what other municipalities were doing. And sort of this is as a question of process. Can I bring new information into this today, or is that fair for me to do?
The information that
public
It actually,
information.
Yeah, it's,
it doesn't really matter because all it does is underline my reservation. So what I read this weekend makes me question what we've advanced even further. I feel like more needs to be done on around our risk tolerance policies within the village. Is this something we've actually discussed properly? Are we setting a risk tolerance that we can all live with, that we've agreed to, or are we just adopting something from North Vancouver as the gospel? So that's my reservation on the risk tolerance piece. I'm still not clear on what the trigger is for a covenant on title. Is that something that we balance against our risk tolerance? Is that something that's set in stone? I think there's a gray area there, and I feel we haven't zeroed in on what we're all comfortable with. And when I say we, I mean the villagers that we're all comfortable with. The last sort of piece that nags me is that it's all hinged around a report that was written by one individual that hasn't been formally peer reviewed, and from a scientific perspective, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I struggle with that piece. We're sort of banking a lot of our policy on one person, and I don't like it. And the last sort of element would be, if we're going to go down this road, I'd feel more comfortable if we did a due diligence exercise which stress tests a number of properties. So we have a sample of properties throughout the village, maybe if it's just 5, but we actually go through the exercise of what does it cost, what are we asking people to spend.
As if they were developing.
As if they were developing, which could be, whatever that trigger happens to be. And then, are we rendering their lot unbuildable? Are we encumbering them with an unnecessary covenant that makes their property less attractive for sale? There's a lot of open questions for me, and I know I've asked them, and I just don't feel satisfied with what I've heard. So that's my contribution to the discussion.
Okay, good contribution, thanks.
So, on my end, I've always been cautiously optimistic about the ability to go back and deal with things in the OCP as it was developed in earlier years. And I'm painfully aware of a lot of the stuff that went on with council at that point in time and of the decisions. And I've been awakened, my awareness has been awakened by probably about 5 phone calls from residents after the hearing. And they were not nice phone calls.
Sorry,
That's it.
You received information?
did you receive
No,
it?
no, I didn't receive information. What I did is I got opinions from people that they are not happy with the process.
fair enough.
That's it.
Okay.
It's not substantive opinion, it's just a feeling that there's a lot of residents, or not a lot, there's several, what I consider residents who have called, that are concerned about the process. They don't like, number one, the timing,
Yeah, but hang on.
okay?
you can talk about the process.
It's process.
But he's talking about he's got input from 5 people, and they told him the following things.
No,
They love it, they hate it, they're neutral to it.
there's concern.
I don't know that it's any different than the people who stood up in this meeting and said they have concerns about the process and feel
Fine,
that
okay.
things are being rushed. I think that's all I'm hearing.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Okay. So, I want council to be, I'm listening, I'm listening to my inner sense saying to me, we've got something here we need to resolve with the community at this point in time before we move forward.
I've had reservations about this thing for a long time, and I've tried to identify some along in the process, not specifically talking to residents, but amongst ourselves, and I think everyone at the table probably knows some of them. If I could just use a couple of examples, because I'm right where Norm is. He's articulated better than I can, but when we voted against the DPA thing, that we were going to eliminate the requirement on homeowners, existing homeowners, my intention was the homeowners of the residents who are now living here want to do an addition, they would be free and clear. But then the new development, to me, does not mean a footprint greater than 25%. If it's an existing homeowner, I would have preferred that they were free and clear from this. Because I think a person should be able to develop their property. They lived in their home for who knows how many years, and doing a renovation is not going to add more danger to them living there, so I don't see it as necessary. Anyhow, that was one point. The other one that really caused me a lot of concern as I was considering this stuff over the weekend, I got onto the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists of BC, and there's one sentence here, I've got a whole page of it, but it says, although APEG, which I just mentioned, does not agree with using undefined statements as, quote, the land may be used safely for the use intended, or that development may safely occur, until there's defined levels of landslide safety where the approving authority requires such a statement. They go on later on in there to caution their members to make sure their professional liability insurer is on side with them on this. That to me is a big red flag that we're getting out into touchy territory here, and I don't like it at all. And if I could be, well, I had pages of stuff I could say, but I won't use too much time. Just suffice to say that I'm not comfortable moving this thing forward.
In its present form.
Right.
Ron?
Thank you, Mayor Burr. I think to editorialize on behalf of all of us here, this is a framework for staff to work with for development, not just multiple residents, but single people as well. And I reflect over the many months of this that basically the Cordilleran report reports what it is, the situation. Many residents point out whatever they say is always what it was. We live in the side of a hill, there's risks, and that's just what it is. So it strikes me that by the way we're going to it, we're kind of poking people's eye with the report, and don't like to do that. I think I'm also kind of observed that, well, I didn't go to the meeting, I was otherwise committed. 40 people attended, but only 6 spoke, and we have 4 people tonight. Philip suggested that for different reasons that a large piece of the community's there, and I think both he and Penny have pointed out, which I believe is the case, there's no subterfuge going on here. Calendar works to a calendar, council works on a calendar, whatever it is. But I'm quite aware that if you communicate something poorly, you frequently get a bad result. I believe that's your phrase, and I'm feeling we're treading on that area here. And so while I would in spirit like to move this along down the road to give guidance to potential developers, both single or multiple, so that they can consider the opportunities that they have personally or from a business perspective, we do that so that they can go to the public and sell the project to the public. They're not selling council, they're selling it to the public. So the common sense of this is that, to me, we should park this for the time being. I would not go with this in its current form. I think we need to explore the information that Norma's presented in some of the situations. And I don't have a time frame on this. I'm left and right on this one. I'd like to move it along because this council's pretty aggressive on their agenda here. But we're running out of time, so I see my projection here is this will get moved to September, and I quite frankly would be prepared to make a decision for the representing the community in the last 2 months of term, but I think we should have a bit more information to take some of this out, and I think we actually should do another hearing and get a better opportunity. The flip side here is if only another 40 people came and 6 people spoke, that pretty much sends a big message to me.
Okay, thank you. I can only echo what I've heard around the table. I do believe that we haven't adequately communicated even the high-level drivers for this project, let alone the details. I think some people will be very surprised to find that their wall will attract a need for a geohazard assessment, which may have been required in the past. The building inspector may have said, hey, we need a geotax report. No real guidance, no framework what that report would look like, but one was required anyway. The whole idea here is to systematize, make consistent, make fair. I think we're not there yet on the details. I have no understanding of where these risk numbers come from. I'm putting the risk numbers in the report. I know some are policy, provincial policy, some are best practice. I think some geoscientists would like us to have no more than a 1 in 20 million risk. Well, that would be very nice, but I don't think we're there yet. I also see a 1 in 20 risk as maybe high, but I don't know. I mean, I still don't understand how a 1 in 20 annual return frequency translates into a probability of 90% in 50 years, but I don't know if that's math or risk analysis. I have no idea. So I would agree that we're not there yet, which is anathema to me, because we have people, I have people, we all have people calling us up, talking to us at volleyball, at the store saying, when can I subdivide the lot that I've had in my family for 40 years, build the house that I want to build, and sell the other one to pay for the house? I mean, obviously the policy impact is purposeful, right? That means an additional tax parcel, and maybe the house that they build, it might be a duplex, and they send their kids to our school. So there's a long drawn out policy thing here, but I would agree that we're not there. So what I suggest is that we entertain, there's two approaches. We can consider third reading and adoption and vote as you see fit, or I would consider a motion to refer this back to staff with fairly detailed marching orders, pretty much what you just said, in terms of the risk tolerance levels, how other people do it, in other words, all that stuff. But I don't want to presuppose, so I'll ask for, there's two recommendations in front of us. I'll just remind us what they are. I'll get you in a sec, Jim. I see you there. The first recommendation is for third reading of the bylaw as it stands, and the fourth, of course, is adoption. We're within our rights to do adoption on the same day as third reading?
Yep.
Yeah. The other alternative is a motion to refer back to staff, including a fairly substantial, I'll just remind us of the primary goal on the top left corner of our strategic plan, which is to utilize professional communications consultants on all important materials. So I would hope that if anybody was to make a referral motion, that would be part of the motion. So I need a motion. Jim.
So, I propose just that, in that we refer this back to staff to take a harder look at it and look at our, really, I want to look at the process around that and make sure that we're doing our diligence and ensuring that we are moving forward on solid ground.
Okay, thanks. So we have a motion to refer. Can I have a second on that one? We'll have opportunity for discussion.
Second.
There's a second. Discussion.
Communication piece is key. I think Peter's been writing meticulously. Norm has been had some ideas, and given more time, I think is more.
Well, all 6 points you raised were excellent ones,
Yeah,
and I think, as Fred said, you articulated them better than I could ever.
So
but
I'm actually thinking on this one, it's 7 weeks till our next gathering. I would, I don't know how staff feels about this, but I'd maybe ask Norm to check in partway through to make sure that we're representing council and staff in the same kind of thing, so that we don't come to September and we're not where we want to.
And so are you suggesting that we should present options to the community?
No, I think it's the information piece here. I think we just...
It is, I mean, this is a best practice policy. There are questions, why do we need it now? Okay, we can answer that. So Peter, yeah, maybe you want to just jump in here.
So I'll jump in here to disavow what you just said. It's not best practice being put forward. Best practice would have been to do the development permit area regime. That's best practice. provided for in legislation, it's what the government intended people to do, it's what some people have done, including district admission, the development permit area guidelines. They have a different way of assessing their hazards, as does the Fraser Valley Regional District. Dates back to a 1993 methodology established by someone who was working out that way at that time. Things have evolved. There are different ways that geoscientists and geohazard people look at these things now. Things have evolved. The methodology that's before you tonight is one which actually provides more flexibility in terms of meeting a safety threshold than does, for example, the methodology used by the Fraser Valley Regional District and the District of Mission. But I certainly understand that you're not comfortable with where things are at, and I would suggest that staff comes back with a report which basically attempts to explain the options and the different methodologies used by different jurisdictions. What are the differences between them? What are the pros? What are the cons? That sort of a report before attempting to rewrite a bylaw amendment and bring it back and put it in front of a public hearing. Council needs to advise staff whether or not, as between 2 or 3 different options, as to what other people are doing or have been doing, and what the pros and cons of those options are, and then direct staff to go and put the chosen option in the form of legislation. I don't really see it working any other way, at least not efficiently. So I think that would be what I would suggest.
Okay, thanks.
in
I
terms
mean,
of-
I
so
would
just-
suggest that's encompassed within a referral motion to
Yeah.
refer back to staff. I think exactly what you said is right. This is not just council. This requires extensive community consultation. Now, I know that we throw these parties and nobody comes, so we need to do it a different way. Whether that's mailing or in words of very simple construction. The presentation that we gave in the public hearing, which is a hearing, not a presentation session, was complicated. It's a lot of text. We understood it because we've been going through this a lot of time. This was the first time many people had seen it. Unfortunately, it was a hearing, not a public information session, and it was too late by then. So the communications piece is vital.
Equal to the content of the other.
So, yes, ultimately we end up with a bylaw amendment, an OCP amendment, that the community, not just council, its representatives, but the entire community knows about, has expressed its opinion on, and will work within the required legislation, which we know it's not like it used to be. You can't run Lions Bay with 2 people like we used to, and the legislation has changed as well. But I think that's all encompassed in a referral motion. Norm, I think all the things you said, for example, peer review of the driver of this entire exercise, which is the Cordillion report. I think maybe we need to budget that. I have no idea what a peer review would cost, but it's not going to be free. That much I know.
For sure.
To gain the necessary comfort on behalf of the community, and with the community seeing it as well, that we've got the right end of the stick here. And it is the Lions Bay way, that we're not opening ourselves up to unnecessary, whatever it is, market threats, but also fulfilling our duty. Would that all be encompassed by a referral, Peter, back to staff?
Yeah, well, like I said, I would bring back a report dealing with what are the options, what are the regimes used by other jurisdictions in BC and elsewhere if necessary, and
Provide options and choices.
and council from there can decide how they want to deal with it. They can say, okay, that one, but we have a lot of questions about that one still. We want to know this, that, and the other thing, so can you go out and find this information, bring it back? Or can you answer these questions? Can you expand upon some of this stuff? Is it necessary is it absolutely necessary to do covenants this way? Can they be done a different way? But I think that before it gets too far down the road, that whatever the preferred option looks like from council's perspective, ought then to go to the community before being put into a legislative format that is tied to a public hearing. At the very least, it should be a public information session so that question and answer can take place with less formality. But even before it's put in a legislative format, some of it might look like legislation because it's not just simple stuff. It's fairly complicated, and it does require a bit of concentration and comprehension. So yeah, there's some effort involved in understanding it for sure, but certainly if there are ways that we can make it more understandable and a little more user-friendly, then certainly that's worth exploring. But I do believe that it should be discussed with the public before it gets to the stage of trying to put it forward for more readings.
So, having said all that, it puts us into clear-headedness here, and the reality is we've got 1 month left in a term for council to do all of that stuff and get it moving.
And we've been working on it for 2.5 years.
So all I'm saying is that we need to be sure of our information. We need to make sure the process is solid. And honestly, I think it's quite conceivable that we'll be making a recommendation to future council saying that this is what we've done, and move on from there. Because you're not going to get through the public hearing process again.
No, there's certainly not enough time to go through all the steps before
Right.
council's term is done. As an aside, I would also point out that yours truly will be off for a couple of weeks at the end of August, so there's a little bit of time out of there.
As will we all.
As will we.
There's no meetings in August.
So it will certainly take some time to move it through these next stages and undertake that
Realistically,
public consultation.
Yeah.
So
realistically, public consultation is going to go forward in the fall, if even that soon.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. So I think we're all on the same page here. I want the consultation to take place in many mediums, not just the dog and pony show that we put on here with the projector and the local expert speaking in riddles. We're going to have to come up with different mediums. We're going to have to hire 1A, the professional consultant, to get this right. Whether it's a mailer or a television show or a media room or whatever it is, got to get it right, because we want to make sure that we know. I mean, I think we've just demonstrated we have a fairly clear representation of the sense of the village around this table. That's why we were elected to do that. But let's make sure we get good ideas may even come out of it. So let's do that. Okay, so there is a second. Fred, you wanted to? Sorry.
Well, just one other thing if I could add to it, and this sends us up a little bit off in the weeds, but we have a lot of infrastructure stuff that's got hard dates and everything coming up. And I would like to see us all just back away from this issue over the summer and let staff put their time in where we're under a lot of pressure to get our water system up to scratch. And I would rather see the energy invested in that than trying to beat the daylights out of this when we probably won't get a good look at the final outcome of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's, with infinite resources, I suppose that would be, without infinite resources, that's a requirement. I'll just remind us all for the strategic reason for encouraging development in the village, which these are the nuts and bolts pieces to do. But we don't want to go off half-cocked, and we don't want to deliver something that's the wrong thing for Lions Bay. So reluctantly, I will, unless there's anybody else who wants to speak to the motion. The motion is to refer to staff and all that entails, as discussed. You ready for the question on that one? All in favour? And opposed? That carries unanimously, reluctantly on my part, but necessarily. And so, I believe, Peter, how does this work I'm just not going to ask for motions on the second two recommendations?
No.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, we'll move on. You see, we do listen.
Thank you, thank you.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Please tell everybody that they must come to the future meetings
Yes, we will.
and read the stuff we
In the
send.
expanded chambers.
Yes,
Chambers, yeah.
we're going to hire a bigger hall.
Great.
Okay, let's move on. I've now completely lost track of where we are in the agenda.
Since the chief is here, why don't we
Yeah, so-
mess up the agenda again?
Since we've messed it up completely, let's actually do
And
another
so
mess up,
yeah.
and that is move the item 9E, which is the 9E1, which is the Lions Bay Fire Rescue update, to now.
Beautiful.
Would somebody like to move that?
Yes.
It's been moved and seconded.
So chief, it has been made so.
Well, we have to just approve that motion. All in favour and opposed, that carries. Welcome.
Welcome, Andrew.
Do you want to just pull up a chair? Do you want to stand at the lectern? So that report, believe it or not, is on page 133 of the current agenda package. Go for it.
I need in my glass is actually what I needed. So.
Okay, well, we've all seen the report, so I suggest that we don't go through it again. Let's have, unless you've got something else to.
Well, you've all read this.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
course.
So yeah. So what we're doing at the moment is my training one on there?
Yep.
So at the moment we're still out looking for a training officer. We are doing in-house training at the moment. We're putting all the homeowners through the current playbook. Everyone's sort of like we're doing each module every week. Obviously, modules take longer than 3 hours of training, but we're getting through all that. All the training reports now are coming into the office. So we get weekly, they usually come in every other week, they come into PAM and then they get logged. So we always have copies of everybody's training, their abilities is always stored in the office now. So that's good. We are still obviously actively looking for a training officer. I've just put it on the back burner while I get the homeowners to the level we need them at, so they can be outside firefighters.
Right, so I prefer to call them permanent volunteers. So what are we inferring from that? None of the current permanent volunteers can go interior
Inside.
attack?
Two will be able to once they finish this, because they're going to step up to the next level.
Okay.
But they can't at the moment.
But we have enough to fight one
Oh, yeah.
interior fire in terms of the future professional volunteers.
The other, pre-recruits, they're all qualified to go in. We still have to do a team lead. So what I'm doing is I'm just getting them, because they're the guys who are training now. So they're all doing modules, the 4 officers, and they're training those modules. So once we finish this, which we're close to, it's around 46 hours. Once they've done that, then they all have to take their officers course, because we still need team leaders.
Mhm,
So
yeah.
that's sort of where we're at for that. So that's the training one. That's still a big one though. There's still a lot of time I'm spending on dealing with that. The classroom is pretty much done now. Got a sprinkles just to finish up. Brickgo's been up. They're just going through our deficiencies. I think Nye's got. They're just going to do one more walkthrough to make sure they've done all their deficiencies. So then we can release their 10% once it's been signed off. But it's looking pretty good out there.
Okay, so the deck piece, the third point on the trailers, is that in addition to the budgeted amount, or was that budgeted?
It's part of the insurance claim. We always had a deck on there. It burnt down. So I went out and got 3 prices: 27,000, 28,000, 20,000, and then we did it sort of with some ex-firefighters who were carpenters, and they said they could do it for 13. So I spoke to Pam. We're running out of our insurance money. We've got $5 grand or $6 grand left, I think, from our insurance. So, you know, I was going to see if we could, because we're saving money on our training officer, if we could borrow us and push that towards it, and then I think we're done.
Let's reallocate the budget.
Okay, well, that will be a separate discussion, which I'm sure I'll be interested in, because I want to know what this is all going to end up actually costing us after insurance. Okay, fine. I look forward to seeing that when time comes. Camera.
Camera?
What does caught mean?
Oh, I caught people.
Actually, oi!
Yeah, I caught Payless stealing cars.
The Rex?
Yeah. Yeah.
Pay him $157 to take them away. Why would they
We
steal
pay
them?
them. We paid
Yeah.
them to bring them up for them to cut up,
Yeah.
and then I caught one of their drivers coming up taking one.
You
So
thought
we
it was
cut-
cut up already?
Yeah, he didn't. He thought he was going to sell bits off it. Is what he thought.
Okay, let's not get into the details on the enforcement stuff.
Well, he just asked
I
me.
know. Let's not go down the road on
Okay.
other aspects.
Okay, well, so what I'm trying to understand is, what's the nature of these trespassers, and
Well, I've
how are they?
had. We got a couple of guys last week just coming through,
Sightseeing.
taking stuff, going through, rummaging, pilfering, but just going through the cars, just generally going through the
Outside the fence or inside the fence?
inside. Well, our fence is not. It's sort of like
Really easy to get through.
Sort of a fence.
yeah.
Okay, well, obviously we're not going to discuss how it's monitored and by whom and when, because it's
Well, I
a public
monitor it.
meeting. Yeah, but
Okay. Well, that's that.
I'm glad to know that it's showing some result.
Yeah, so we've had I've been up there a few times. I've seen the guys up. Say I went up last Thursday night and got some guy.
Yeah, ultimately, of course, what we're seeking to ensure is
We
that
need
it doesn't
signage up.
catch
I
light.
thought we had some signage somewhere.
So did I.
It's not up yet. So I've asked to put some signs up.
It does say
Because
that.
I can't really do anything with no signage.
Mm.
I did take a picture of the guy though and said I'd send it to the police.
That's all you could do?
It's in my daughter, and the guy was a bit of a weirdo, so I just went up and took a picture.
You couldn't detain him for a little while?
But that's good. The cameras are good because they're now, and you know what? Also, it does. It stops the guys just going up there willy nilly. It makes us sort of like
Extra level of surveillance.
Yeah,
That's good to know that they work and that we should maybe consider them for other hotspots.
and they're cheap.
Okay, good.
So for fencing, we got a quote for fencing. I don't know where that's at. I know we had a couple. I think is some are a bit higher than others. And then so up there. So we got. Also, I brought in a seismic, or like an engineer, to look at the burn building. So he's come back, and Peter has been dealing, reached out to him as well. So I've just got to follow up on that. I think he just wanted a couple of Neil met him.
Yeah.
So he looks like he'll sign off on it. We just got to do a couple of things on it.
This is for the burn building, and
Yeah.
then it's ready to go.
No,
Well,
it's ready
yes
to
and no.
finish.
I
It's
can
a stop
finish
work
it.
on it.
I haven't worked on it because I need this.
Oh, this is just to get the stop work off.
It's not. I don't know why we keep saying it's not got a stop work on it. How it can't have a stop work on it because they ain't got a permit.
Yeah, there's a permit.
No, it's
No.
not. No, it's not. It's not. It's not a building.
It's a structure.
Yeah, but it's not a permit. It's not It's not a building permit.
Okay,
Building,
well, we don't
know
need to get into
so,
that right
but
here, so.
let's just
Let's-
stop using that silly term.
Okay, well, all council knows is that we have funded.
We haven't spent anything though. You funded, but we haven't spent anything yet
Yeah.
because we thought we had a geotech come up. We've had a structural engineer come up.
The point is that we've taxed for it,
I know. So we run out of time.
and it's not being delivered. Okay, so, so burn building is no progress.
Yes, progress. We've got a structural engineer that is prepared to look at it. Previous structural engineers were not prepared to look at
They
it.
wouldn't even
They
come
looked
up.
at it and they weren't prepared to sign off on it.
So,
They said they would, and then they didn't. They wouldn't do it.
I've provided the
We're making
information,
progress.
a bunch of information to this structural engineer, who's come up, had a site visit. We haven't heard back from him yet. I'll follow up with him in due course. And once we if we get a sign off, then we will proceed with completing the building.
Yeah.
And we've already got operational aspects of how that building will be operated in the future with respect to propane, exhaust fans, fog, etc.
Interconnections,
No
yeah.
Class A burning materials. So we're moving along. Things are progressing.
I'd like to add one thing, maybe in support of what Andrew's saying. I say maybe. And that is that, first of all, my first question is, there are other municipalities that have burned buildings.
Yeah.
What's the permit process around those buildings?
Complicated.
No, but that's fine. But the thing is that we are, I don't want to say running a business, but we're doing something, providing a benefit to other fire departments, okay, with training and stuff like that through a burn building.
Well,
So-
we will be, one day, maybe.
Yeah, okay, but that's fine. But
That's the concept.
So I just want to talk about this thing about permit because it bothers me a little bit. And that is, here we are sitting talking about, we all know that buildings require permits in the village, okay? So we're calling it a burn building. That's the first thing I think is wrong, okay?
It's
Secondly.
an apparatus, actually.
Hmm?
It's apparatus. They call
Okay.
it apparatus.
That's right, okay, so it's an apparatus, it's a training apparatus, okay? It's a training structure, hence the engineer who can sign off on it, that's a great idea. But it's all how we record it, how we put it down, and how we deal with it ourselves to make ourselves duly diligent in our process.
Okay, well, that's a good point, and maybe it is just a matter of semantics. Maybe it's not called a burn building. Maybe it is called a
Training apparatus.
Training apparatus.
Training apparatus.
Yeah. The way things stand today, as I understand it, the building inspector has required a permit of some nature.
No, he hasn't. He's required engineers to sign off on it.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that is progress. So, okay. And then you can finish construction?
Yeah, all I've got to do is put doors in it. Put some doors.
Okay, so there's not
anchor
much to go?
doors. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
I mention this because I'm going through a process with building on Gabriola. And everything that's put in place seismically by the Islands Trust, the building inspector says, engineer,
Yeah.
done. Get an engineer, sign it, doesn't even look at it, fine, thank you
That's
very
what
much,
Dave
have a nice
said.
day.
That's exactly what Dave said.
Great job.
It is, yeah, it really is.
Don't get ideas.
But, you know, yeah, it is, yeah.
Okay, fine.
Okay, so that's where we're at with the burn building.
Yeah,
The
training apparatus.
Training apparatus.
Yeah, let's expunge that term. It's not a building,
No,
and it's not going to burn.
no, it won't.
So your
burn.
average, I mean, when I first saw this, I thought, what the heck? We're going to burn down a building for training every time and build it again?
What's that?
Training apparatus.
Fire hall exhaust. So we got 3 quotes for that. We've issued PO for that, and I think it's coming next week.
That was budgeted, right, Pam? That was the one of the few that were budgeted for
Yeah.
the whole.
It was
yeah.
rebudgeted. We were able to increase the amount because it was a lot more expensive than we had originally budgeted. But we
We
have
was
enough
hoping
money
to
in this year's
reuse
budget.
what we had, but we couldn't.
Okay. But council is aware of what it's going to cost and has approved that
And it's an
amount.
accurate budget in
Okay.
2018 for the cost.
Fine.
No, I think I'll be quiet, it's okay. I'm just gonna, I'm thinking, I'm putting my WCB hat on for a minute, I'm saying, I know all the standards just changed.
Oh, for the,
All the permissible standards for all that stuff, any of the stuff that comes out of exhaust and stuff
Yeah.
like that, it has changed just recently.
Okay.
Okay, I don't know that it would affect anything that we're doing, so I'm not qualified to make that
Yeah.
decision, but it's a good idea to be aware of that the regulations change, make a phone call to find out if it's gonna affect. And look at the standards that they're referencing.
It's probably gone higher rather than lower.
It has, yes.
Yeah, so what we've got, what we're putting in is gonna take all the exhausts out.
Okay, so if it's taken all of it
Yeah.
out, that's great,
Yeah.
then you're good.
Well, I presume the vendor will know what the current regs are.
Yeah, but it just, because what it does is it just clips onto the exhaust and it takes everything out.
Yeah.
At the moment, we have to do it manually, and it doesn't, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work.
I was thinking more like a scrubber, and that's a whole.
Yeah.
Exactly, I was
That's
gonna
the
say,
scrubber, the
yeah.
scrubber.
so is
Yeah.
there a scrubber now required, or is it just
No, it
just
would be.
moving the exhaust somewhere else? Is there a stack?
If you were using a scrubber, that's where the change would be.
Yeah,
If you're removing all of the exhaust fume, period, and you're testing to ensure that you are, you shouldn't have a problem.
Okay.
still gotta put the bay lights, still gotta do the lights. They're there, just gotta put them up, I think.
Which lights are these?
Our main lights, there's quite a few out.
They have PCBs in the ballast. We have a contractor coming in, scheduled, budgeted,
Yes, I remember.
3 quotes,
Yeah.
so.
Contingency, I'd like to start thinking about putting a contingency in to replace 6.3, the Mini. Just so we can get so we can respond up to the mountains as well and get back to having that for our interface fire, like it used to be.
So what is it used for today? I couldn't quite work out
We
from this
don't, we
paragraph.
use it for our interface, but it had the cart system on it and for foam and water, but it's just all broken. We were going to sell it a few years ago, and then the generator got pulled out of it, and then we couldn't sell it, so we sort of held on to it because we use it to pull our trailer for all the interface stuff. But it's just we used to always send out. There used to be the first engine that went out in the 90s. We used to always go out in that because we only had 2 trucks in those days. And then the new one used to come in. So for instance, if I got there, I'd go out in the Mini, do a size up. So when the guys came in the big truck, they all knew I'd already tasked their jobs out to them. We stopped doing that when we got the engines. So we all just go out in the engines, down the big engines, and we task them out when we're driving there. But the Mini is still. It's still, if we had an interface fire here and we needed to get up to Crystal Falls or get up to the watershed, that Mini can get up there. That one will struggle because it's just 2-wheel. But if we budgeted for a 4-wheel, it can get up there.
Okay, how much money are we talking about?
Probably around under 100.
Okay.
Because it's not a full engine.
It's not just an ordinary truck, but it's not a full fire engine either.
No.
Can we lease
Anything,
those?
buy a fire truck for $100.
We can't
Guys,
lease fire trucks.
Can we lease them?
Can you lease fire trucks?
Oh.
Never heard of it.
Well, I thought CMAC did just about everything using them as an example.
Yeah, I mean that's just a cash flow question. It's they'll lease you an aeroplane.
Yeah, probably could. I don't know.
Well, somewhere you must be able
Yeah.
to.
So how soon would you want that?
I'd like to start thinking about it over the next sort of 2 to 3 years. You know, the weather's getting hotter and hotter and hotter, which
Yes.
it just worries me every summer. Worries me. You know.
Me too.
So,
So, but it does its job now.
yeah, it doesn't really do a job now. If we had a big fire, all it would do is just transport the stuff up there, and it would it can literally only get to the first bend at Sunset, to the tanks. It can't really get too much further up there because it's just.
It's 2-wheel drive and it doesn't have
Yeah.
what it takes.
Yeah. We've pulled a few people off the mountain in it, but it needs to be replaced. Yeah. We're not using it for what it was designed for what we originally designed it for.
Okay, well we'll discuss that in more
Yeah.
detail later. But I mean, to spec out exactly what role you need a vehicle for, it sounds to me like you
I
need
want
a,
to interface. That's what
yeah,
we're
high
looking for.
wheelbase, 4-wheel drive.
Carry water, have a calf system, and so we can go up into the watershed.
Okay. And as far as we're concerned, we're talking about $100,000.
It's going to be around that. I know when Britannia did theirs, they've got a little guy. Theirs was, I think it cost them about 70, and then they put about another 30 in just to upgrade it to.
Yeah,
Well,
and it's not to say that
Lions
Lions Bay is going to have to pay 100% of that either.
No.
So, okay, okay.
I don't know where that came from. That's not very bad, so that's fine. That's it, I think.
Thanks.
Response with calls. We've got the calls here. We've had a few nasty ones. Definitely down. Still motorbikes. Had a rollover. But on the whole, we had a couple last weekend, but not too bad.
Since you brought up the reduced highway callouts, by and large, you're fine with that? I mean, less is better than more, or?
Yes and no.
I mean, that's kind of where I'm going. I know that there's a zeal for more is more, but there's also a lot of body parts and this kind of thing we all.
Yeah, what you find is, it's like when you're training all the time, you train. If you don't get out to play a game,
Yep.
it gets a little bit boring.
Okay, thank you. Next question, and we're in open, so I'm gonna phrase this in a 20,000 foot level way. You're looking for a training officer, I presume in the previous format, and it hasn't worked out yet. Without naming any names or where you might be going, where do you see this all coming out in the next 6 months or so?
For a training officer?
Yeah.
So what I'm doing is I'm breaking down the modules. So we train sort of like Auto X, we train high angle rescue, walkable banks, interface fire, first responder. So sort of like there's not that much when you break it down like that. So what I'm doing is, in fact, I'm just doing an interface next weekend, I think. I'm hiring someone.
Okay, so.
So I'm bringing in, say for instance, your forte was interface, Pam's was first responder. I'll bring you in to do interface. I'll bring Pam in to do first responder. Pete to do something else.
So you're doing a specialty consultant gig instead of having one person.
Yes.
And that's working for you?
It's a lot of work, but it's working for me. But the guys that I've got on Saturdays, they send me their training programs. I read it, I go through, critique it, send it out, and then they send it out. So they've been really proactive on that.
So
and it makes them a little bit more, take more ownership, rather than just looking at me or the training officer and just showing up on a Wednesday night. What are we training? So there's some thought going in there. So I quite like that, because now they're sending it out on a Saturday, so when the guys come on a Wednesday, they're already prepped. They know what they're training, and they're already prepped.
So would you continue in this format, or are you still kind of looking?
Yeah, I'm still kind of looking. You've got to remember, we still got a revolving door. So these guys that I've got now that have really stepped up to the plate, are they going to be here next year? Probably not. You know, so it's me continuously training these guys up, you know, and they step up quickly and good, but they're still not, you know, certified training officers, which is what we really need to keep the level of where we're at. It's good for interest, and the guys are enjoying it. It is working, but it's not longevity at one.
Okay, so in the short term, you're not burning out on this one?
No.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Any other questions for the chief? This question is to do with fire, but more for Peter. Who audits our training quality? Do we get inspected by a high level of government?
No. If there was an incident that went badly, there would be an investigation, and they would want to know you know, who was training, who did what, and how and where, and when and why, and make sure that we have been doing everything that we're supposed to be doing. Then there are, you know, the agencies that provide standards for, you know, like the fire underwriters service. You know, sometimes they go out proactively looking for updates on fire departments. So I think we've had a couple emails in that respect. But
It's more to do with hydrants as well, and placement, and it's more to do with the infrastructure.
That's for the service that gets provided. I'm more wondering if a firefighter gets badly hurt on the job and their lawyer claims inadequate training.
Well, that's why we do training records now. And you've got to remember that because 90% of the guys have got Fire 1 and 2, they're already qualified. It's just the homeowners. So they're all...
Permanent volunteers,
Yeah, that's
the new term.
semantics.
Yeah, it's semantics. What's it semantics? It's all semantics. Okay, thanks. No further questions? Okay, a motion to receive the report and a second. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, now I believe we're going to get back to the regularly scheduled programming. And I believe that is item number 6. Is it hot in here or is it hot in
It's
here?
hot, it is hot in here. Oh, they were turning the air.
I don't know if that's not going to make it hotter. Is it hotter out or in, Nye?
In.
Oh, good. Seeing as it's 35 outside, that tells you how hot it is in there. Okay. Approval of minutes of prior meeting. That's the meeting of July 3rd, starting on page 7. Can I have a motion and a second? Corrections?
There's no changes. None.
I certainly have none.
I had two actually, and that is the item under the follow-up action lists, I7A number 51. I don't believe that says what we wanted to say in the record of the meeting. Councillor McCulkin declared a conflict. Sorry, I obviously need some more coffee. Due to personal and/or financial relationships with the professional being considered for sole source on the work anticipated. Otherwise, it makes no sense to the reader, because the fact that they're a resident is irrelevant, and the fact that they were being sole sourced is the germane point. So what I suggest is we change that and/or financial relations with professional being considered for sole source on the work anticipated.
Or sole source.
Yep.
2 words.
As you will see, that there's a motion 2 paragraphs down that we waive the purchasing policy in order to sole source the anticipated work. So we moved and seconded and carried that it would go to Russ Micklejohn, but I believe that we're going to hear something about that later in the meeting from the chair of the Beach Park Committee. So that was, I'd like the minutes to reflect that. And then the other one was in item 15 on page 13 of the minutes. Did we not direct, and should we not have, the policy that was approved in the open minutes? The reason we considered it in closed because it involved legal advice. But then once we approved them and announced it, it should have come out. And this is the place where they would be presented.
Not necessarily the full policy within the minutes.
How else do people see it?
The policy is named, and an approved version of the policy would appear in the usual place for that, which is on the website.
Okay, fine.
So it's if there was lack of clarity in terms of what it is we're talking about that was approved, then that would be an issue. But I think it's pretty clear what it is we're talking about.
Fine, so this policy 1702 can be found
Mhm.
on today's website. And we're actually going to be considering amendments to it again today. Okay, fine. So no changes there. So with that one small change, anything else? Okay, so it's on the floor. All in favor? Opposed and carried. Business arising?
Hey, none.
None. Okay, we'll move on to unfinished business. I believe there are no changes to the unfinished business. Certainly haven't seen anything, heard of any. Unless there's
55 is complete.
55 is complete. Okay, good. Thank you. Shauna, got that? Most of these are, we need input. The beach park update. Did we not receive that at the time? We're not expecting another one, I presume. That's item
It
number
was
51.
requested to be put here so that you can ask about
It's
it. every
ongoing.
Oh, to
meeting.
keep going around and
That's
around,
how
okay.
I presume.
Okay,
So-
fine.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so
what
I'll
it's
ask
here.
about it, just for that exact reason. Is there anything to update on that?
The materials for the shower and the handrail have arrived. We just haven't had time to do any work on it.
So it's case priorities, shower, signage.
Parking signage?
Mhm.
That was supposed to be in mid-May. I'd say
So
parking
shower or signage?
signage. Clearly, it was supposed to be in mid-May, so...
Okay, so you don't want the shower yet, till the signage is finished?
This, Peter, the summer is half over, so it doesn't really make any difference. The question is a moot one.
Well, no, it's not a moot point, because council, I haven't heard from council. I think that you're speaking on behalf of council, assuming
No,
that
I'm-
council agrees that you think that the parking signage is more important than the shower. I think that this is, if staff is to receive direction
Thanks, Peter.
on priority, then we need to know.
There's your priorities. I'm pointing at the poster.
I'm pointing at the item on the agenda, Mayor Bird.
Which item?
Shower or signage?
Where's that on the agenda?
Right here.
Well, he's
Park
asking.
Mine.
for
Beach
direct-
Oh,
park
you're asking for
update.
direction.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm asking council for direction. Shower or signage? That's my question to council.
Okay. We won't ask for a motion. I'll go around the table.
Shower.
Harvey tank replacement tender. That would be.
That's not your
that would be on
choices.
the top of my list.
That's not what you're being asked.
I'd go for the shower.
Shower.
Both. There. You've gotten your answer. Anything else? What about the paving of the CM lot?
And the handrails.
Right now, we're just focused on flushing and signage.
I don't think we've received all the materials yet
No.
we need for the drainage, so.
No, the purchase of the materials for the drainage was beyond our credit card limit, so we have to get a credit application with the vendor, which we are doing, and we should have the materials within a week.
We can't pay by check.
Well, they won't accept a check unless we do the credit app, and they're getting stickier with the credit apps.
It's typical.
Yeah, we've noticed they used to take a day, and now they're taking a week and a half.
I would have thought that cash doesn't require a credit.
It's not cash, it's check. We don't pay our bills in cash, we pay by check.
Certified check? I mean, for heaven's sake. And I have asked this question several times, so I'll ask now. When is the anticipated date, with council's not around the table, that the initial parking plan as provided in that map would be fully installed so that it can be tweaked according to several resident communications?
So right now, we've got about 20 new poles installed, is that correct?
Yep.
And there's about how many more, 80?
60 to 80 to be
And we're
installed.
capable of doing about 4 to 5 poles a day because we have to call PC1 call on some of them, and especially in Kelvin Grove. So that's probably a good 3 weeks plus.
3 to 4 weeks. Yeah.
Barring things that happen on a
Mhm.
regular basis.
Right.
For example, today we had 2 calls for leak requests. We had 2 BC1 calls. So there are daily things that we have
Sure,
to do.
yeah, that's
Plus we have flushing going on and,
Mhm.
and staff off.
Yeah, I just need to know when it is. I'll just also remind us that, at a certain point, the parking demand tapers off and there's no need to rush.
So more or less, it's going to be done Labor Day weekend.
Mm.
All things being
This is
equal.
all part of a high strategy that For example, I do my tour of the village on the weekend to see, wishful thinking perhaps that it's working, but I then realize that there's some idiot parked here, but there's no sign that it's not supposed to be. So the future policy says it's not supposed to be there because he's blocking somebody's driveway, but there's no sign that says that. So obviously to get the strategy working, it needs to be fully signed. So I have my answer now. That wasn't so hard. So we'll keep that one on. Anything else? Any further updates? Did we follow up with the resident?
Yeah,
Number
that's
57? Okay, and I know 58 was done. Well, was it in fact? I don't know how I know that. I think I saw something.
Got copies.
Okay, so 57, 58 can come out.
Did we talk about 56?
56, we didn't talk about it because I suspect there's nothing yet. We just asked to know what's going to happen there when it happens.
Yeah, when it happens.
Okay. Okay, good. So what are we doing here? Motion to do as discussed. Oh, sorry, not.
Peter, 52?
I think that could probably use a further discussion as to where we're at and options and so forth before we come back to council with that.
Okay. Nothing you want to give us a heads up on at this stage?
2019 budget.
Oh, okay. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so that can stay on there. So let's just receive that as actions as discussed. Motion for that. And a second. All in favour? Opposed? That carries. And there are no IRRs.
And the reason for that is because I simply did not have time to even look at them, let alone prepare staff preliminary responses to them. As you can see, this is a fatter than usual agenda. We had a public hearing last week, a heck of a lot of work, and no time for IRRs in this.
I don't think anybody's arguing the point.
And the hydro outage.
Oh,
Well, fortunately, I was able to work from home
Well,
during the
fortunately
hydro
for you.
outage.
Yes.
and had
Oh,
copies.
that
That
turned out
would've
to be
been
wise
good.
because it turned out there was actually an outage
There you go.
after all.
Right.
Okay, we'll now move on to reports. The first one has been deferred until. It was deferred until a discussion of the discussion that we undeferred. So we can have this one now, but we've already approved moving it down to the end of the thing, so we'll do that.
Actually, I wouldn't mind some guidance on this one for staff. If they're going to do one, they could think about the other one.
You want to do it now?
Yeah, it'd just take me a couple minutes, and I'm pretty sure I have a good idea on this.
Doesn't
one.
make any difference to me, but we need a motion to re-amend the agenda. So you've moved it, and a second, and that's been seconded. Any discussion? All in favour and opposed, that carries. So let's discuss as in the order as originally presented in printed black and white.
So on this, the community amenities contributions, the policy that's been set out is very clear by the CAO, well articulated. The piece that's missing for me is some comparatives to other communities. We're in a bit of a vacuum here, and I understand the rationale. The math is very simple, but the piece that I would like to see is some comparatives. And using the one that I happen to see, which was a single lot split in half, and the charge was $11,500.
10%, yeah.
And see, it's all logical, but it's in a vacuum, so I don't have a context for that. So I was thinking in terms of this, to pick, communities like Burnaby, it bears no relation to this. So to me, Squamish would have been one. I would suggest Bowen Island, another. West Vancouver just as a high contribution, and maybe I guess District North Vancouver would be the last one for me.
Well, Enmore and Belcarra,
Enmore and
the
Belcarra.
obvious comparators.
Yeah, and so I think
Bowen.
just to use the ones that are cited here as an example with a spreadsheet of what the other ones did would fill me in on this one.
to the extent they have such a thing as
Well,
CSE.
or
But,
however it gets fudged into it.
yeah.
But then we've got the universal information to come back to the local decision.
I know Belcarra just put in place a community manager contribution policy, so
Well,
there will be.
that's a fairly substantive piece of work, so that'll take a while.
Well, it's,
We've got a while, because the piece, yeah, this is another leg of the stool, but another leg of the stool has been sent back to the factory. So, which is why I wanted to defer.
well, and I, to be fair to staff, I didn't want to, delay what my contribution to this. When I'm sure I'm going to see nods if I said anybody disagreed. No.
No, I couldn't agree more. We'd be making this decision a complete vacuum. I have no
Yeah,
idea if
I-
10% is
no,
fair or not,
I-
or if we're leaving money on the table. I don't know. I would like to see this policy redline from the previous one, but because I don't know what the changes are, if any.
I would recommend that the changes are substantive enough that you should
Just
just
start
view
again.
view it as a new
Start a new-
document.
That's fine.
So my recommendation would be, and I'll go back to Fred in a second, and I'll wait for a second, is that this goes back to staff to be completed, as I just mentioned, and brought back after the OCP changes come forward.
Okay, well, we're still on the original. It hasn't yet been moved and seconded, which is why you do that first, so we know what we're discussing. But this is Lions Bay. So anybody on the original discussion, which is the policy in front of us, before we talk about referral? Or just mix and match, have at it.
Well, I got a question if I could, and I've read this a few times over, and I'm not sure if I'm missing something here, because it just seemed odd. I'm looking at 5A and B for the calculation. In 5A, they're talking about $100 a square meter of floor area.
On a cottage.
Yeah, on a cottage. And there's no other multiplier other than the square footage. But then on B, they've got $200 a square meter,
Times half.
and then they half it. So,
Well, it's a single lot versus the cottage is on title, but just a one. It's not.
It could be simplified and just do $100 without that times 0.5.
well, that's what seemed to me to be.
But what is the original reason for doing that? Because you see a lot of these CSCs do that. Is that perceived benefit to the owner? Is only half of owning a full one?
Yeah, not sure.
Okay, well, I mean, I think it needs to be done in a defensible, standard way, and I have seen lots of these like this. I never knew where the factor came from. Yeah.
So let's expand the mandate on that one for the information on the grid.
Yeah. I had one question under C, and that was who decides on the value? Is that in the next assessment, or are the people required to get
It's a
an appraisal?
negotiation.
Oh, it's a
It's a
negotiation.
target and it's a negotiation.
What I want to double my land, and I think it's going to add $1 to the value, and you say no, it's going to double the value.
If you come in with $1, then you're not going to get very far very fast, and your application's going to languish. So come in with a realistic number. Let's talk about methodology evaluation. If we have to, we get evaluated.
Okay. So just leaving it as this, the land value as this concept is good enough. You don't have to stipulate how that's achieved.
No, because it's a target that negotiation is expected.
Okay.
But I will bring back information about how others do it.
Thank you.
Okay, well, before we get there, we need a motion to refer this back, because right now the question is adoption.
That's my motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded for referral. Any further discussion? Okay, to refer this back, as discussed, and perhaps with more to come. All in favour? And opposed? That carries.
Thank you, Carl, for your
That was actually the
forbearance.
third option, so that's good. Okay, moving along. We are now at the
Update.
982. Public Works Manager, Clean Water Wastewater Fund Verbal Update.
So this is where I was sort of like, oh, and then I said, well, it doesn't matter because I'll just say it now. We need to move this to closed.
Okay, fine. Well, we haven't even looked at the closed agenda yet, so we will defer discussion of this to closed on the basis of land, legal, and labour, I'm sure. So that one will go. Moving on to the RCMP Auxiliary Program report on page 21. It's fine, succinct, easy to read report. I had one question before I ask for a motion to receive it, which is the recommendation. And that is that it wouldn't be feasible in Lions Bay since all auxiliaries must have direct supervision. Why is that not possible in Lions Bay?
The presumption is that RCMP are not available in Lions Bay other than calls for specific patrols or responses.
They have to be physically
So-
present in Lions Bay.
Yeah,
They can't be in Squamish.
They have to be.
What does direct supervision mean?
Direct supervision means,
In the same car.
yeah, in the same car,
Yeah.
in the same vicinity.
So you need somebody riding a shotgun, which
Defeats the
original
purpose.
policeman would
Yeah.
do it
These-
anyhow.
But that doesn't make any sense to me.
Apparently-
Why would you have an auxiliary if you've got the police right there?
Apparently, the program has been overhauled, and they used to have more discretion and ability to parameters for exercising their authority, and that's all been pulled back. Because this is a national program, that's what they dictate.
Oh, I hear about this when I go to the iHit seminar or whatever it is. It's either at Green Timbers, which is the RCM training facility in Chilliwack, or we have a meeting in Burnaby every 4 months. So I hear that this auxiliary program is in some disarray, but it seems to me an ideal solution. We're actually meeting with with Tara, what's the last name? The inspector who runs Squamish, next Thursday, I believe it is. So we'll raise it then. Because,
Tuesday,
is it Tuesday? Starts with the T.
31st.
It doesn't make any sense for a place like that. How does a small community police itself? So that our signs don't get stolen and graffiti doesn't get sprayed. I saw your guys painting it already night. That was great.
Nice job.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks. I don't know if you noticed, for example, for some reason, somebody's gone to the trouble of unbolting, not just ripping off, but actually unbolting 2 bus stop signs and the park and ride sign down on Isleview. So somebody went to some trouble. They brought a wrench to start with.
Cloudview. Not Cloudview. Just below the highway there.
A municipal sign or a TransLink sign?
Municipal sign.
They took it apart.
Unscrewed the angle or the bolt at
Yeah.
the bottom.
Oh,
And
on
took
Southview,
Southview,
Yeah.
the whole sign.
yeah,
So
next to the landscape.
purposeful, or was
yeah.
it a prank?
Home decoration.
I mean, what purpose would?
It could very well be home decorations. I've seen that. Yeah. College students seem to like having signs in their dorm rooms. But
Not using a pole.
yeah. Well, you can use poles for lots of things. So the point is, it's not the Lions Bay VOLB. There's not people walking around watching. Okay, so I'm not taking this one lying down, but the recommendation for now is to receive this report. Any other comments? It's a good report, so say thanks to Mike. Second? Did I ask for a motion? Yeah. Second? All in favour? Opposed and carried. Annual report, page 23. We all know that the deadline for producing a draft is the 30th of June, which was accomplished on the 30th of June. My message, is this my final version or is this the version before my final
That's your
version?
final
That's the final version. Made it. Good.
Thanks to Shauna.
Thanks to Shauna. So what's the deal here? We make comments now to make this final, or do you need written comments later, or?
It was made available to the public. There were no written comments, so at this point now, council just has to say, per the community charter, that they consider the annual report. It's the last step. We've advertised it 3 times as required by the charter. We've made it available for 2 weeks prior to this meeting, and we've had no feedback. It's been on the website.
Okay, so I mean that may be so, but there's several things that need fixing. For example, I'll give you 1 or 2 of them. I am not a member of the 2015 Transportation and Governance Task Force, because that was in 2015. I'm now the vice chair of the Electoral Area A subcommittee, stuff like that. I'm certainly not a member of the Econ board. I don't even know how that got in there. I'm not sure. I would like it to be in here, but the 2018 priorities document, is that appropriate for 2017 report?
In terms of looking ahead,
It's
Which we're required to do.
goals and objectives council has in the year ahead, which is 2018, so
okay,
that's
fine.
why
There's certainly that requirement, yeah. And then in the CO's message, there's 1 or 2 typos. It's please to share and election, etc., etc. But the thing that I had my main concern with, I mean, some of these police reports, to make them understandable, I would have some suggestions. Curly Stewart committee was a 2018 committee, right? Yeah. And that is, I'll find the damn thing. These graphs in the back. The graph, the second graph on page 74 of the package. Something went haywire with the municipal property taxes for 2017. I haven't seen it. I mean, I saw it online, but I hadn't seen it before it went out. So that's something. That's clearly I hope it's a mistake because I think we.
So you're looking at the property assessments? Oh,
Yeah.
there, sorry. Well, this was correct number because it was 2017 was the year the assessments went through.
But this seems
Okay. Well, okay.
And that's the one that's the most germane to people, and we need to understand that. Can we adopt, approve, accept as amended?
well, if you cite every single amendment,
Well, that's what I asked. Do we do that now, or?
kind of have to.
Okay. Okay. Well, so that obviously needs to be fixed. In the age distribution by population graph on page 77, the census was in 2016. So what's its 2017 numbers? And as far as the graph goes, what happened to everybody above 49 years of age?
We asked them to leave.
They are leaving. There's nowhere to live.
They're retired.
Okay, and then the graph below that, 25 people per dwelling or per household. Other attached dwelling. 25 people living in my woodshed? I don't think so. So I don't know what that graph means. But there's something wrong with the scale. Because the average household size looks about right, 2.7, that's good. And then the graph over the page, the income graph, I guess you can work out yourself that the unlabeled ones are the ones in between. So the second row, the second bar from the bottom is $11,000 to $19,999. But it might be useful to say that. But the one at the education one, these are not exclusive, I think, because there's university certificate or diploma below bachelor, and then there's another university certificate. These are just different buckets, not for comparison.
It was from for the census. We just took the categories for the census.
That's as reported by the
Yeah,
census.
yeah.
Okay, I can live with that. It doesn't really make much sense because there's several categories for degree, for example. But okay, if that's what they want to report in the census. So those were my initial flags. I don't know if anybody had any others. Yeah, Ron?
I have one, and I'll look at my council colleagues and I'll just say this. Does this not look like a Kelowna Hillside Fire to you?
It does. That was
No,
my
I thought it
first
was quite
thought
nice
since I saw
actually.
it.
Well, I'm just saying that Hillside Fires might be a little touchy with residents right now. So, something to think about.
You said there were some typos in
One or two. No, well, I wouldn't suggest we change. I mean, there's a ferry there, for heaven's sake. There's
Just
Hut Island.
mentioning it.
Yeah, okay, yeah, fair enough. On the on my external bodies, I'd like to remove member of the Transportation Planning and Governance Task Force. I'd like to say vice chair of the Electoral Area Subcommittee and remove member of Vancouver Coast Health Governance and Econ Board.
Do you have your marked up pages? Could you give us your marked up pages?
Sure.
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Yes, that was it.
I'll do just that. I'm only going to give you the ones that are marked. In Peter's, there were one or two small things. I like this picture of the weir. It's the first time I've seen it in this report. The financials, of course, we've all seen. Any others? So, as discussed, what's the recommendation is to adopt. That council has considered
Yes.
and made amendments to, or that just happens? That's what the results of the consideration was. For me.
Pardon me.
Fair enough. Okay, so a motion that we have considered, motion of consideration.
There we
It's
go.
not something you do very often.
Annual report as amended.
I think we're all pretty considerable people, considerate people.
Very considerate. Oh.
As amended.
As amended, yeah.
After the word community code.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but I don't know how many people are going to read that thing with fine tooth comb. But it is the document of record.
Oh, no, we need to make the corrections.
It needs to be accurate.
No, I'm saying, you know, any oral and written submissions and questions from the public, none.
Yeah.
You know, I would be surprised to hear that anybody looked at it, which is a pity. There's quite a lot of work goes into it. It's excellent, but maybe it can be referred. I know a journalist referred to one once and castigated me on something that I had said. Okay, so it's been moved. I don't think it's been seconded yet. It's second. And any further discussion? All in favour? Opposed? And carried. Okay, anybody need a break? Everybody happy? Yeah, everybody good? CFO's mid-year review, page 81. Pam?
This is the reason I called it a preliminary mid-year review. I wanted to present it now rather than in September because this is the first time we're really seeing financial information. But of course, we didn't have all of the June invoices in when I did this report. So I still think it was more accurate to do it. Like the big expenses like the payroll and the capital are all in. There just might be some invoices that we're still getting in now that relate to June. So it's fairly accurate. It's enough to give us a feel for how we're tracking against budget and to detect any, sort of an early warning system to see if there's any areas of concern, which at this point there are not. So I've done my usual. I've gone through and sort of done the detailed analysis just so it's a matter of the record and it will be on the website. I don't know if there were any questions or what approach you wanted to take.
Council?
First up for me, thank you very much, Pam. You're right, the information, which is 17 days old, is far better today than September the 4th. So thank you very, very much for that. A couple of questions on this stuff, which looks like we're all tracking. The one oddity that I see, and it's usually staff is pretty bang on in the revenue piece, is that the building permits are down quite a bit, and it's unlike you guys to be off that much.
Yes, the building permits have become a bit challenging because we had such an extraordinary year last year. So when I budgeted, I didn't actually budget as much as we had in 2017. but it's somewhat seasonal as well, like the work picks up over the summer. And we've just actually now had a couple of very large building permits come in. So at this point, I'm cautiously optimistic that we will meet that target.
Okay.
It's a very challenging number to predict
Yeah.
because
Well,
we
we
really
saw in
don't
the annual
know.
report, there were 33 building permits last year versus 12 the year before.
And there were some large ones, new
Yeah.
building, new houses.
We're
So-
at number 9, building permit.
Right.
So,
Number 9.
There was nothing issued in June.
but size
Yeah.
is dependent on that too, so, okay, so.
Just say that again,
So-
Susan, sorry, I didn't
We're
hear
only
that.
at building permit number 9
Oh, wow.
this year,
Yeah.
and there was no permits issued at all in June.
Well, very hard to estimate, obviously.
Then we're working on a very large one for July. That's
Yeah.
about 17,000. So, yeah, I almost wrote a comment on it, and then I waited because I don't. So I'm glad you flagged it. But
That's fine.
I'm cautiously optimistic. But it's a very challenging number to try to budget.
So really for me, I have no questions on the data, which extends to the capital expenditure program as well too. So I'm a clean slate on this.
All I would like to know is how did you manage to get the utility number to the penny?
Which one? Because they're not
The
allowed to be
revenue.
petty.
No, the revenue.
Oh, that's because I know how much it's the grant in lieu, and it's based on we get a percentage of hydro
When you know the winning
and
lotto number, it's not hard.
That's right, exactly.
and TELUS. They're actually
They
paying
are.
us based on their 2017 revenue. So I actually find out in the summer what it's going to be. So that's why. It's
The
a
correct
problem
answer
if
is
it's
I'm
not-
good at this.
I'm very good at this.
That's the correct answer. Okay, well, it's yes, you are very good at this. This is when no questions arise and there's no flags. I think that's sort of first prize for a council responsible for an admittedly small budget, but it's big for us.
In a lot of places, you follow that statement with, in my opinion. But yes, you're right.
Okay, so I'll ask for a motion to receive this report. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favour and opposed? That carries. Thanks. Pam, where is the... Oh, there it is. I couldn't see the recording device for a second. Still running? Looking good?
Digits are moving.
That may be a good sign. Okay, now on page 99, we have a recommendation that staff submit an application for grant funding for the Bayview Water Main and Stormwater Mitigation Project, the Bayview Project, through the ICIP Green Infrastructure Environmental EQS program. The report's in front of us. It's on page 99. My only request is, can we not call this...
Yeah, there's
change.
there's some changes.
Oh, there's changes. Okay, well,
We
that's...
almost pulled it as part of the agenda preview,
Oh,
but
You
we
got something?
decided we would let it sit and
Okay.
we'll talk about it.
okay, talk.
So, who wants to talk? Do you want me to start? We looked into having as we talked about, having someone write the grant for us, and that was Urban Systems, the company that we've engaged to do our asset management plan. And they gave us some information on the grant, nothing that we weren't completely surprised by, and that we knew this would be a tough grant to get. There's a lot of people are applying for this grant, and it's a very small budget, but the bigger money is coming next year. And it's quite different from, although we've jokingly referred to it as clean water, wastewater too, it's actually quite different. The requirements really stress environmental. So during that discussion that Public Works Manager had with them, they feel that our Bayview water main portion of the project would not be successful. So they're recommending that we change it. So maybe I'll pass it over to Public Works Manager to describe the changes they're recommending. Just for this grant, not the project itself, it's just to be successful for the grant.
So, in essence, the crux of it is we need to have further discussion, so a conference call with Urban Systems to discuss exactly what we put forward. Whether it be the PRVs or the Bayview Drainage Project. The problem with putting forward the Bayview Drainage Project is if we get funding for that, at some point we would have to upgrade the water main, which means digging up Bayview Road. CAO De Jong suggested that we could put down first lift on the Bayview project, and save the second lift of asphalt until after we receive funding for the water main project, if we do. There's a lot of questions that are up in the air that we still need to further delve into.
One of the other alternatives was to simply self-fund the water main for the portion from the intersection of Mountain and Bayview down to the Stewart Road.
To Stewart, yeah.
Yeah, and that just sort of ballparking number
about
was
150,000.
yeah.
Okay, well, so that was going to be, that would be my immediate suggestion, but is not the road cambering project the lion's share of the project budget? The shoring, retention structure, pinning?
Depends on how you write the grant. So the road is an after effect
Of the drainage.
The drainage, yeah. So the design is for a underground storm system, so not a drainage swale or ditch on the side of the road.
Yeah, no, we know, yeah.
Isn't the success of one dependent on the other? They sort of go hand in hand, don't they?
No, they're two, well, we've been advised to consider them as two separate projects.
And
Yeah,
would you
they
physically
need
have
to
to
be-
do them as
They
separate?
need to be concurrent, they need to happen like they are now and now, not 2 years apart.
Not necessarily.
No?
It depends on what sort of risk we're willing to accept with respect to the fire flow at the school.
Well, also looking like idiots digging up the roads twice, which was, sort of the whole thing that we didn't want to do. But
Correct.
If we're talking about a self-fund requirement of 100, we can talk about that
150.
separately. I mean, ballpark,
150.
150. I mean, but not 1.5 million. So now, Urban Systems is qualified to make a determination what we are more likely to be successful on.
Yes, they're quite an expert. They're actually currently working on 6 grants totaling $60 million for this project. So we think there's a lot of interest in this grant. That it was, would we use it over?
It's going to be
Oversubscribed.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt.
And there was less money anyway available. Even the grant application itself discourages anyone doing grants over a certain dollar amount. They're telling them ahead of time they wouldn't get them.
So it is for smaller projects.
Relatively speaking, smaller projects.
So we still need to have further conversations about whether or not the balance of the Harvey tank project, all the PRVs and control valves and old storage tanks and so forth, could be framed in such a way that it would be, potentially a successful grant project. But if the answer to that is no, then we would recommend trying to figure out how we want to frame the Bayview project. But if they come back and say, well, actually, you've got enough environmentally significant aspects to the other project that we think that you stand a better chance with that one, then we would bring that feedback back to council.
Do we have, sorry,
Ultimately, it's going to require a special meeting.
because it's the time the application's due August 29th, it would require a council resolution.
But you only need a resolution to say go ahead and make the application. You don't
We
need
would
a...
have to name the project.
I see.
That's the key part, yeah.
The Pan Lions Bay project, there.
To name the project.
The
we
Blanket
have
Lions
to-
Bay project.
I think council also has to approve the conservation plan that we're still.
There's several items that are outstanding.
And we have to approve
Feasibility study.
the funding. So, yeah, you've got some work to do before you can tell us what the funding component is. So my
So-
question was that, what is the proposed breakdown between borrowing and reserves?
To be determined.
Okay, well, that we
Yeah.
certainly want to have something
Yeah.
to say on.
Well, when I say to be determined, we have 300, did I say that? We have about 357,000 in the budget. It was based on, I assume, because at that point they were calling it the Clean Water Wastewater 2, it would be the same 83,
17%,
17.
yeah.
And it's not. So.
This is
and
what,
again,
40 plus 33?
So when I say dependent, I mean, I know what the split was on this, and I also wanted to, I said up to 600, we didn't actually need that much, but just in case, it's hard to, usually they say that we'll fund the percentage of the project, because they're asking for a dollar amount. This isn't my wording, this is the wording that's dictated by the grant. It's a little harder when they ask for a hard number. So I changed it to say up to, but this will change depending on the project. So when we actually go to do the resolution, I will have that split. I mean, I have the split on this. It was about 450,000 worth of loans, and then we could make the decision to go 100% loans, but I wanted to have that flexibility that we could also drop the reserves.
Yeah.
But what this conversation with Urban System is scheduled for tomorrow. Nye and I are talking to them tomorrow, so we would have this information in time for a special meeting next week.
Okay,
So
my
we'll do that.
only question is, it's called the Upper Bayview project or the Mid Bayview project rather than just Bayview, because there's going to be other Bayview projects. For example, the control valve at the school and all that stuff. But that's just semantics.
Yeah, we can work on that.
Unless we can call it the Pan Lions Bay project or the Blanket Lions Bay project, but maybe that's split too.
It's a funding split, Pam.
It's 40-33 and us.
It is.
Yes.
43 and us.
So we have
27.
The
27 as opposed to the
17.
17
Yeah.
I budgeted for.
So we will be considering recommendations on reserves later. And as an upshot of that, I believe that we will have the expectation, the lion's share of that 600 or whatever the number turns out to be will be debt funding rather than reserve funding. So just bear that in mind. So you're saying we should just table this for now
I think so.
and come back at a special meeting once you've got the numbers better nailed down.
And the
then-
project. The
yeah.
big one is the project. Have the project nailed down, our recommendation, and then the funding.
Yeah. Now the plan that we paid $80,000 for 2 years ago, what does that encompass of what might be the final funded project?
The infrastructure master plan.
No, the Mid or Upper Bayview design project. The drainage, camber, and I don't think.
They're still working. That wasn't 80. They're
It
still
wasn't
working
80.
on it.
What was it?
24.
Oh, I don't know where I
Yeah.
got. Sorry, I don't know where I got 80 from.
Yeah. Sorry. The question again?
Is that plan complete for anything and everything we would apply for, or would we need more plans?
No, that's complete. And within 2 or 3 weeks, the water main design will be complete.
That's right. So you're doing that on a speculative basis as well, and the PRV designs are understood. So you have everything you need to scope the project fairly well.
Barring the requirements that are stipulated in the grant, such as a feasibility study,
Water.
an approved and
Conservation.
council endorsed water conservation plan.
Well, that's the whole point, right? So, yeah, I mean, this is the environmental quality substream, which just on the face of it is what we're talking about. Anything in any sort of environmental quality substream? Are we going to be
Yeah,
pushing
so
our luck?
The Bayview project is a stormwater project that will mitigate first flush contaminants off the road. So it discharges into the receiving waters.
Just remind council what that is. Just what first flush is.
First flush is the contaminants such as road oil, vehicle leakage, brake linings, etc. that get deposited onto a road during the first heavy rainfall after a dry period. Those contaminants get heavy metals as well flushed into the drainage system. The design calls for a vortex grit separating manhole at the end of the project that will eliminate those sediments and solids from getting into the receiving waters.
Or reduce anyway.
Reduce.
Needs maintenance.
Needs maintenance.
Yeah. Okay, so table the report, or table the recommendation, or whatever it is.
I don't know that you even need to table it because it's going to come back looking different no matter what.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
I think,
Okay, well, let's just
I think
have
you
a-
could just receive it.
Yeah, let's
and
just
we'll be
receive
bringing
this,
back something different.
Motion to receive, and second. Any further discussion? All in favour? Opposed? Carried. Somebody's making toast, and it smells good. Or at least I hope it's only toast. Nobody smells it?
You're not gonna have a seizure on us.
Is that a characteristic?
Really?
We're all having it then.
I smell something that does smell like toast. It smells like food though.
Okay. Right. Moving on to accounts payable listing, page 101. Pam.
Yes, this is a list of all the checks that we had issued for the second quarter, April 1st to June 30th, 2018. That I bring every quarter, council.
Okay, thanks. Good to have. Questions? Flags? Ron?
Just, I forget more than I know, and I'm looking at Pam, okay, you can look at my sheet right here, 104 of 270. Dead center, it says we're making a loan payment to Metro.
Yes, we actually, it's the MFA payments, but they go through our regional
Oh, okay.
district. Yes.
Thank you.
Any others?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, anybody else? I did go through this with fine tooth comb, but I'm not going to bring any of them up except maybe two of them. And the first one is the rescue dummies, fire training, $10,700.
Yes, that
Was that budgeted?
It was financed through the insurance proceeds. They were the dummies that were in the trailer that burnt.
Got it.
So we got insurance proceeds for those.
Thank you. I see we paid to AECOM a CLAT generator report fee of $16.67 and another one of about the same amount. Is that what the thing cost? $3,000 for that report?
Yes, and that was in our capital as an expenditure for the generator.
Okay, I'm not going to open the discussion on what's happening with that report, but okay, that's fine. Tools, $2,800 worth of tools. I trust we keep good track of our tools, and
These are budgeted, they were included in the capital budget that was approved.
fine. So I don't need to
We
know.
do track them, as they'll be in addition. So we do track them at the end of the year.
Okay,
But yes, that was all part of it, was a
as in
lump
like an
sum.
inventory.
Yes, either they're in capital, if they're expensive enough, they'll hit capital, and if they're not, they're expensed, but we do
Yeah. Okay.
track them.
So I will restrict myself to those. I have more, if you want to hear them.
Let it go.
Motion to receive the report then? Thanks, and a second. Any further discussion? All in favour and opposed? That carries. Thank you, Pam. You've been busy. Okay, so one final staff report, and that is on-table report on the vehicle RFP, award of contract.
Yes. So I will pass it out.
Okay, we should have had this before, but all right.
Technically, it's on table, it's just sitting on spot.
Yeah. But this, we're going to be reading this now on the fly.
Mostly spoken to.
Thank you.
Yes, to me. Oh, thanks. Sorry, I just have to find my copy. Have notes on it? Yes, so the reason this is on table is we issued an RFP for the vehicle, the public works trucks. We wanted to get proposals on lease and or purchase. And originally the due date was a week ago last Friday, but we had a request for an extension from two proponents. So we extended it until July 13th. So of course I didn't have time to analyze the results, but we did want it to come to council. This is the last meeting before September. And we will need, we would like a decision if we can. If it's a lot of information, so if you feel if it's too much information, then we could also defer it. Like, I'll present it, but then if you're not ready to make a decision, we could bring it back to this special meeting. But there's a long lead time on ordering these trucks, so I didn't want to wait until September to go ahead with ordering them. So when we analyze the results, we currently lease 3 trucks with ZMAX, but because of the additional employee we're going to have, we had actually, we had budgeted for leasing 4 trucks. And then in the proposal, we put in some optional pricing for a 5th vehicle to replace the pickup truck that we currently own, that is on its last legs and is used quite a bit. So when I got the results, like I say, we currently lease the vehicles from ZMAC, but when I did the analysis, and the analysis we'll look at enclosed because it shows details of a specific proponent's bid. But specifically, I looked at the lease over a 5-year lease and then I looked at what the capital cost, because they provided us the purchase price, would be to purchase. And I was a little bit surprised at the results. It clearly indicates that purchasing is a better option. So essentially, for just, so the number's $27,000 more over a 5-year period, so just over $5,500 a year. At the end of the 5 years, we would own the trucks, as opposed to under the lease, we would just return them. And one of the proponents had provided a buyout amount, so it's probably conservative. We could, if we went to auction, we would probably get more for the vehicles, because our vehicles have very low kilometers after the 5 years, but that would be $67,000. So basically we'd be $40,000 ahead. And in terms of the maintenance, it would be equal, because under either the leased vehicles or the purchased vehicles, we'd have to do the same maintenance. So staff's recommendation, and this wasn't my expectation when I got the proposals, was that we actually purchase the vehicles. So right now I have the purchase of the 5 Public Works vehicles, because we do feel that would be a benefit to replace the current pickup truck we have, because it is going to be due for some very major repairs. And then the appendix just basically shows what the 5 trucks are. The 5th truck is to replace the pickup. So we currently have 3 trucks, and then because of the extra staff member we will have, we are recommending 4. So in my budget, I have the lease payments, which are a little bit less than what the loan payments would be for 4 trucks. And then we would get the loan through the MFA, their equipment loan, the same loan we got for the backhoe, because their rates are quite incredible. They're 2.32% at this time. So when I did my calculation, which the details of which we can go over in the closed, I just sort of tried to estimate best I could what the rate would be in 2023, and then I just took an average of that rate. Like, I didn't take the current rate, because the expectation is interest rates will be going up over the next 5 years. So like I said, I was a bit surprised at the results, that it clearly really leaned towards purchasing the vehicles rather than leasing them. So I can present this now, and what my recommendation would be, we could talk about some of the more finer details in closed, and then bring it out again if you wanted to consider it. We also have the option, if you want to take the report away and think about it, then we can discuss it again at the special meeting next week.
Well, we can maybe decide it then, but let's have some questions
Oh, no,
now.
definitely. That's why I didn't want to pull it.
Questions, Council?
What I was concerned about, or curious about, is I understand that the present lease condition, if we have a breakdown, they give us a replacement vehicle. Is that factored into when you buy it yourself, you have no replacement vehicle, and your downtime might be an issue?
It could be. I mean, I don't know if they give us a replacement vehicle, because we did have the vehicle that was damaged in the snow incident, and we didn't get a replacement vehicle, and we had to go through ICBC to get it repaired.
Wasn't that the original deal when we?
I thought there was a bunch of perks having them to it,
We
but
wouldn't
it
ever-
escapes me
yeah.
now, the serious
Yeah.
now.
I mean, since I've been here, anytime the vehicle has had downtime, we've had to
Okay.
take it in to be repaired, and it wasn't.
But did we call the leasing company and say, where's our replacement vehicle?
Yeah.
Our loaner?
Yep.
Yeah,
And they said,
no, we don't have a loaner.
okay.
Okay.
When is the lease up?
It's up now. So we actually, because there was a delay, a bit of a delay getting this out, but ZMAC has agreed, and it's actually part of the lease, that we can just continue to make the lease payments
Monthly.
until monthly, like we do now, until,
Presumably the residual's going down, but they're getting money for it, okay, so.
yeah, like basically, although we would have been paying, if we continue at least, we'd be making lease payments, but you're right, the lease obligation has now been,
And what is the,
is
what
down
is
to
the,
zero.
so over 5 years, I think you did this analysis, over 5 years we would pay an additional $27,000, $28,000 in round numbers through purchasing,
Mhm.
loan financing,
Yeah,
purchase.
that was the difference between loan, and we can look at those details in closed, but it was the difference between what I estimate it would cost for our loan repayments versus the lease, which they quoted us on.
So what about if we just, how many years are left on the lease vehicles, or they're done?
They're done.
And it'd be
So there's no residual. No wonder they're happy to let us keep paying for them. So we wouldn't want to just keep paying the lease payment, because the trucks are done anyway. We need new.
And we find 5 years is sort of the optimal amount of time in terms of, after that, the repairs start getting larger. And
Yeah. I see this in the checklist. Yeah, and I very often see two of our crew in the same truck because they're doing that kind of thing. We absolutely have to have 4 Ninja trucks.
You're doubling up on labor when you don't need to. So there are 2 people going out when you could have them going out in separate trucks doing separate tasks. What they do now is the 2 that go out together go out on tasks that require 2 people.
Yeah, but we have 3 trucks, right? And we have 3 people.
There we are. 5.
Yeah, we have 5 people.
Well, plus the pickup, so that's 4. So the 5th one tags along because it doesn't have wheels.
And we're getting a 6th person.
Okay, so when we get the 6th person, then still somebody's going to have to double up.
That's why we've asked for
Okay,
an
gotcha.
additional vehicle.
Okay, I thought this was only in respect of that. Okay. Okay, so we will have 6 people, some part-time, driving 5 vehicles.
All full-time.
Oh,
Mhm.
They're currently all full-time now, and then the new employee will be full-time.
okay. Yeah, okay.
So I have a question. If we own a fleet, how do we have a policy around maintaining a fleet and keeping that fleet running? It's a big investment.
It is a big investment, and there are administrative requirements, legislated, through the Commercial Vehicle Safety Enforcement Program to manage those vehicles, maintain them, driver training, driver license checks annually.
So what do you need from us? Are you asking for authorization to execute a sales contract? I mean, in terms of which is a better deal, I mean, I think that's up to you. I do know that there will be commentary in the community when we get 5 spanking new, shiny trucks driving down the street. Because there are plenty of people in the community who say, we didn't need 5 trucks when I first moved here. But okay, so we're going to take the heat on that one because we do need 5 trucks.
Well, it's one of those situations it is what it is because of the lease, the previous lease and the previous lease before that, how we've done it. However, to be smart about it, a lot of businesses will do that. They will stagger the purchases so that the leases come up or the trucks come due. They wear out about the same time, just 2 years apart because they were purchased 2 years apart. And it makes the initial hit. If we're going to do it cash, it makes it a little easier.
Well, we're not going to do it cash. We're going to do it monthly.
Yeah, because
at a
we're
very low
getting
rate.
a loan. I would agree if we were doing
Yeah,
cash
that's fine.
because of the loan. And I guess in response to that question, because I know there is this perception, but we can remind people there are snow plows, and there's a very high demand here for excellent snow removal. And then with the water intakes, I mean, Alberto, I mean, that truck has to be a 4x4 where he drives it. And so, I mean, there are things we can counter that
No,
with.
no,
But I
I-
agree, the perception is when you suddenly have these new trucks. But it is an income smoothing, like it's very smooth. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
of
one
course.
thing. It's not like you're talking about suddenly taking
Yeah.
this hit. It's smoothed out over the 5 years
That's
with the
fine.
financing.
And I'm willing to accept that
Yeah.
as an explanation.
Mhm. Yeah.
I struggle a little bit with the low kilometers on a 5-year turnaround on vehicles.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be 5 years. In West Bend, the fleet policy was 7 to 10 years.
Yeah.
So
And
So
it's
that's
something
what I
we
was
could look
driving
at,
at
yeah.
when I talked about
Yeah.
an ownership. If
Yes.
we're owning a fleet,
Yeah.
what's the
Yeah.
policy around
Yeah.
that?
yeah,
You could spin it in a pride of ownership way, right? You have a nice shiny fleet, Lions Bay can be proud of. We take good care of it because we have a solid policy
mhm.
for fleets. Like you can market this in a way that
Yeah, we haven't set a replacement schedule. We've not owned our own fleet, so.
Yeah, this was kind of new to us. It
Mhm.
was, like I
Okay.
said, I sort of
We
just
weren't
had this
anticipating.
expectation lease would be better, so I was a bit startled, and that's one of the reasons why. We didn't get the results back until Friday, and you are right, with the low kilometers, that is something we look at. It's finding that optimal time to replace them so that we don't suddenly have huge repair bills.
Mhm.
But again, with West Vancouver, their policy is that then they just go to auction, and they get any residual value from them, and then that goes towards reducing the cost of purchasing, the fleet
So I would
again.
ask about that. If we're anticipating around $67,000 in residual, how is it with the current ones, which are 5-year lease, right?
Mhm.
How come they're done?
It was just the agreement.
Well, are they
The
worth
lease
67?
was-
No, the lease agreement is up.
Yes, I know, but we could continue just paying the lease.
Well, that's what we have to
But-
do until we,
Yes, I know, but the reason we don't want to do that because they're ready, they're painted, they've got the plow fittings on them, they're ready to go. The reason we don't do that is because they're dead,
No,
No.
dead is dead in not functioning?
not worth
No.
keeping on.
No.
So what would the option cost to just keep the lease payments going?
But there'd really be no advantage because we're just paying for a truck that's continuing to deteriorate. What we want is take that same amount of money, but pay it towards new trucks that we will then own.
We get new trucks for
Yeah.
the same money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, not quite the
Virtually
same
the
money,
same,
$30,000
not
over
quite.
5 years.
Yeah,
Spending
over 5
28 to get 68 back.
And the
for
68, I
something,
believe, is
yeah.
quite conservative,
Yeah.
because that was just the buyout amount of the lease, so. And this is what I meant about the low kilometers. I think depending on when we chose to sell them, our kilometers would be lower than what they did in those quotes.
We can even set a policy that's based on kilometers instead of
Yeah.
years.
Mm-hmm.
And make a judgment, I don't want to imply it's automatic after 5 years, we definitely look at the condition, because this is new to us in terms of setting a policy, we have to start, there will be a little more administrative work for us, because we will have to track track the maintenance, which ZMAP did for us, our leasing company, but I mean, we can handle that.
We are a mountain municipality. The
Yes.
roads are like this, or they're like that, not very many of them are like that.
Yeah.
And so the wear and tear is significant on low kilometer vehicles, no matter how you look at it. So I think that, I know, working with Ministry of Transportation and Highways, the years I was there, dependent, the expectation of the vehicle is dependent on the topography that they're working in and what kind of weather conditions and stuff they're working in. And it changed, there was no hard policy.
Okay, well, there's a recommendation in front of us, and I'm prepared to ask for a motion on the recommendation. No need to discuss it further. If the numbers change slightly, so be it. Is the limit that you put in here adequate
Yes.
for all eventualities?
Yes.
You wouldn't like it slightly higher, just in case?
We've got the offers.
I don't think so. I mean, these are very
No.
detailed quotes that we got, pages long for each vehicle, everything, documentation fee, everything was included. And I've added PST and GST to this, just because that will be the amount of the contract, recognizing we get the GST
Yes,
back.
yeah.
So the full cost will be
So
5%.
why are we not, remind us what the reason would be that we'd have to defer this decision? Just to
No,
get more information?
I just felt because it was on table and
so
it's a
fast,
financial
okay.
decision, it was my way of apologizing that I'm dumping a lot of information on you and expecting a
So-
decision. So I wanted to give you time to think about it if you felt you needed it.
You're making a recommendation to council?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's good enough for me.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the recommendation is there, so
Yeah,
you're
that's
willing to
solid.
consider it?
Yeah.
Seconded.
It's been
Yeah.
moved and seconded.
Yeah,
Any
moved and
further
seconded.
discussion? Ready for the question? This is where you're supposed to yell, question! All in favor? And opposed, that carries. Perhaps I should read the recommendation and what the resolution is. The council award the contract for the purchase of 5 public works trucks in an amount of up to $379,000, including GST and PST, to Dams Ford Lincoln Sales Limited, and the mayor and CEO will be authorized to execute a sales contract with Dams Ford Lincoln Sales Limited for the purchase. Seeing as we didn't have that recommendation on the table, I'll ask for the same motion and second again, just for form's sake. Thank you. And any discussion? All in favor? And opposed, that carries. Just to do things by the book.
So where are we going to capture this policy? The fleet policy?
We'll have to.
New
that'll be-
policy. The policy guy.
We will have to write it and look at it. I mean, we look for other municipalities. We sort of seem to be mirroring West Vancouver's a little bit, and we don't.
We don't want to tie it to this, is what we're basically.
To
We would want
The
to.
5 year?
We'll
Well,
bring
we
back
could.
a policy
Yeah,
for
we will bring
council
back a
to
policy.
review.
Yeah.
This is
We'll
just
need it. Yeah.
the contractual.
Again, it was just, like I say, talk about expectations. I went in expecting to quickly review RFPs and pick the lowest lease
I would-
payments, and I came out recommending a
I would
purchase.
also think that we're on solid ground with that because we're in a growing stage. We think we're in a growing stage. We seem to think that there's lots of pressure on us to grow a little bit. So those policies will change with growth and with different councils. So this is a sound decision at this point in time.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to the amended agenda, and that is a report from Councillor McLaughlin on Lions Bay Beach Park Phase 2 signage.
How quickly that was. Yes, so, the long story short is that, a while ago we uncovered that the opportunity to send the signage out for execution was not done. We've then, since last council meeting 2 weeks ago, have not put that out yet. In my view, we're coming to the end of the summer, and it kind of high value utility of having the signs there, since it might take another month or month and a half before it spins through council, well, actually a month and a half before it comes to council for approval, before it goes back up, puts us into after Labor Day at best. So really, I think our bolt has been shot on this, and that my preference would be that we just hold back this piece for the time being.
Thanks. I'll just remind us that last council meeting we approved a waiver on the purchasing policy to allow this contract for development of a concept, and we gave some guidance on what the work was. So this is the other side of the coin of that.
Well, and I guess the more I've reflected on this as we've kind of caught up with it is that we want to get this right. You know, we want to have utility and not grandiose. We want to, back to the key thing is we want to market this in a strong way and not have more questions asked. So it could well be that this comes back to, you know, how imminent is the funding? I'd probably know better in September, October. And basically the utility of the park drops to zero.
The usage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Peter, I think you had something you wanted to add there?
Yeah, so I've spoken with Russ Michael John, and he basically has advised that 1 to 2 weeks is all it's going to take. 2 weeks would be enough, maybe a bit less if needed. And has an expectation as to what is required, having attended all the meetings, and understands Councillor McLaughlin's intonations with respect to less grandiose and practical and things of that nature. What we had discussed was getting this underway and having perhaps a first draft come back for review with the mayor, and then make sure it was, and Councillor McLaughlin as the chair of the committee, and then confirm that we're going in the right direction, have Mr. Michael John complete the project. So we could have it up, you know, 2 weeks and then a couple of weeks to get it produced at the most.
Is that before or after the parking signage?
Jaffer has spoken with somebody at Shireen, so it could potentially be erected in time for the Eat Together event on August 12th. If not, and at that point, you know, we're looking at still 2 to 3 weeks of summer.
All right, well, that would be the target date.
And then after that, we've also got the firefighters due in, you know, second week of September. So we've got a lot of people still coming to the park right up to, you know, September 10th or 12th or whatever it is.
Well, if Russ M can get this cranked in 2 weeks, then...
But let's not lose sight of the fact that the billboard is the tail that wags the dog. It's the work. And that has to be reviewed by the Beach Park Committee, no?
It can be done electronically.
And then commentary and then a rego. What's the nature of the size of the project again?
The size of the sign, the size of the dollar amount.
The dollar amount
was like about $5,000.
Probably most of that was in the actual
55, I
signage
think.
piece itself.
No, 55. In
Okay.
the signage itself would be about 7.
Probably about 4.5. Yeah, got a revised
So-
quote.
Okay. So I think it's doable, and the objective that, you know, had been discussed at the committee level was, you know, get it out there so that people have an opportunity to sort of see what the potential is and provide feedback.
Well,
Is
Peter,
really
I
what
wasn't
we're looking
expecting
for.
that answer.
Okay.
So, and now that we bumped the shower along here, and you hit some key dates that the community will be at the beach, that's...
I think that, I agree with Ron, like, let's just get it moving, get it off the table. We've talked about this thing for a while, let's just do it.
Okay.
Okay, so
That's
no action?
no action.
We'll just
And-
receive
and
that
that's
report?
Based on the last minute info, so
That's
there we
right.
go. Thank
Okay,
you.
so let's just do all of your reports together and we'll have a motion to
Okay,
receive.
and then, so that's that one, and then we're doing the short-term rentals in camera, and so I've got tree committee, and God, I love this is so cool. You gotta love a good tree committee.
No, hang on.
event.
We're still on council reports.
Okay.
So the short-term rental one's gone. You said you had something to do with trees, though.
Yes.
Was it?
Sorry.
Is it the tree?
No, sorry. I got carried away on the
Yeah,
trees. I was so excited with this redacted stuff. Oh, yes.
What's under
I thought that was the, I thought that was the in-camera
Tree
portion.
committee would like to meet with Peter, and allowing for holidays and stuff like that. I'm going to ask Peter if we can do it between these dates. Right here. Anything that would work for you, I'll make sure I'm there, and I'm sure the chair would be there too. And the purpose is to bounce over some recommended changes in the structure that is more efficient for the committee and also for the village.
So I can
Just
check the calendar, and we'll come up with some
pick
some
two
dates.
dates and do the invite then. Okay,
do that.
thank you.
Okay, that was that. Thank you. And then Councillor Bain, wildfire prep.
Oh, sorry.
More?
Oh, no. I keep trying to get ahead on this.
Yeah, no, that's you jumping the gun. There's 2 more reports before
Sorry.
that.
Mine's just a quick one, just a heads up, there's a conference coordination call on Thursday regarding the wildfire preparedness coordination. And I was just wondering if there was anybody interested in, or any of the staff who are gonna tie into that?
Yeah, I was thinking I would call in at 1:30 on Thursday.
You would, okay.
Yeah, I would hope so. If anybody needs to know what provincial predictions and so on are, it's us.
A lot of it's gonna really be a glorified weather forecast, I think, for the most part.
Yeah.
You know, but just in case there's other information that will be important to know, it's not for general public dissemination, but so there may be some tidbits in there that MOF will pass on.
Yeah, I believe you got the information, I just wanted to check and make sure
Yeah.
it came through.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I mean, my main worry always is our fuel load higher than others because it's pretty high. But
I was just gonna say, sorry, I couldn't hear what you said. What was the call for? Conference call for?
That's the wildfire preparedness conference call on Thursday, and the CAO will call in to that.
okay, thanks. So a motion to receive those reports from council, and a second. Any further discussion? All in favour? Opposed and carried. So now moving on to the Mayor's report, which was timed to come after Councillor McLaughlin's, but it's sort of now been somewhat stolen. So the funding would be coming out of the parking budget, which I don't even know if there's room in it. But you've seen the report. Essentially, I believe that we have the opportunity and should seize the opportunity to augment the council's existing resolution to professionally lay out the CN lot and the sunset. I don't actually, to be honest, remember if the sunset lot was also to be professionally laid out. Nye and I have discussed it at some to do with turnarounds and 90 degrees and 45 and all that stuff. But I will remind us all, about 8 years ago, suddenly appeared in the area around the municipal hall a series of Nye's favourite councillor-driven line markings. Some of them had to get ground away pretty quickly because they were just plain wrong. Too narrow lanes, pedestrian crossing in the wrong place. But we've been living with those ever since, including some parking spaces 6 feet wide and some 14 feet wide. And my suggestion is if we had the money and we're doing the work anyway for the other two, let's just expand it by doing this extra piece, which I numbered number 3, and gave some thoughts on stuff that I would like to have looked at. Because when you actually drive around the place with a critical eye, around here it's not great. Starting with the fog line, if fog line is the right term for a local street, being 11 inches from the bus shelter, and going on to all the other things that I enumerate here. But a professional would look at this and say, that's fine, this needs to be fixed, you need a pedestrian crossing here but not here, all this kind of stuff. So I felt that if we could dedicate the money that Ron's just taken back, we'd have the money. So this would be, I'm not going to suggest that we know how we would budget this or fund it, unless you can tell me, Pam, now that it would be available out of the parking budget.
I think my concern, if I may, is that we would quickly find that a traffic engineer or planner competent to do all of this work would be far beyond $5,000. And so without doing, without putting it out there, basically, and seeking quotes, I think it would be, putting the cart before the horse. Like, we need to find out what this would cost.
Well, the recommendation is to put it out there to find out.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that I don't think it's gonna cost 5,000 or less. I think it's gonna be significantly more from, the analyzing what I have seen in terms of what engineering outfits that do this kind of work appear to, well, anyway, I don't have a vote, so.
Well, so now,
I'm just concerned that that's what.
I saw in several previous reports that you have either identified or in the process of identifying the person to design the CN lot. The firm.
We had talked to him. He does not use a computer program. He's not an engineer. He's a line painter that's done this on a his
Sort of like the line painting people we used last year.
yeah.
They also do that for a living.
his background. His justification for his ability to lay out parking lots was the fact that he has done hundreds of parking lots for Save-On, Walmart, Costco. So basically, if we're going to a line painting company, you're not going to get a proper layout design. You're not going to get computer simulation. You have to go to an engineering firm to do a traffic layout, marking and layout.
Okay, well, I wouldn't necessarily dispute that, but just back to the CN lot.
Mm-hmm.
Council's direction was professionally laid out. Now, I know we didn't define that, but certainly Council's expecting to see a plan before it gets painted on the ground.
Yeah,
And he will.
don't know who to go to, unless it's an engineer.
Okay, well, I mean, it's budgeted, it's in there.
It's $1,200 for the line painting, is what's in the budget.
Yeah, but there was a planning element in there as well. We're not going
We
to
were expecting that was going to be feasible, but whether or not the actual cost of hiring somebody to do that on a computer program will be within a minimal amount.
Okay, I mean, there is a computer program, right? I
determined.
identified it. It's called Lotlay or something. No, that doesn't help with the option 3.
None of the people that I've talked to use any sort of program. They base their experience on years of working in parking lots. So I've been told pointedly, you best get an engineer then, because we're not going to do a computer program.
The recommendation to council is to direct staff to tender $5,000 project.
I just said you can't do it for $5,000.
Well, yeah, but do we know that? I mean, I agree.
I just said you can't do it, and Peter just said you
We
can't.
would
Okay,
have
that's
to,
fine.
we would have to go out to tender.
Okay, so then we need to modify it, simple.
I mean, at the very least, we want the CN lot laid out right.
We've got
using
two
this
people here
sketch
that
as a
know all that
starting
stuff, so
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that having a professional mark or lay out the CN lot and provide us with drawings, if that's to be a computer program that does parking or to some sort of standard, it's going to cost a fair chunk of change because we'll have to go to an engineering company.
And then if we want to add all of these things, I think the sunset is just going to be, like, I don't see that we need an engineer to do that. We're looking at doing perpendicular spaces, and they'll be
9 meters wide or whatever the
9 feet wide or whatever the standard is.
9 feet.
Number 3, however, there's a great deal of requested detail. So anybody who was going to quote on this scope of work would have to come out to Lions Bay. Whether or not they would agree to do that, I don't know, or whether they would simply try to do it from looking at a Google screen.
It's not
or
enough
not,
resolution.
but,
They need a survey.
in any event, pardon me?
They need a survey, which we have,
They would need a survey.
Yeah.
Of what?
of the area, of the work area.
Well, there's a lot of detail here that you have laid out in terms of what you think ought to be done from an operational perspective that we would have to get an engineer to quote on, and that could be a process in and of itself. I'm concerned that that would be difficult to obtain. And if they do come out, they're probably going to charge to come out, and the quote is, I'm sure it's not going to be $5,000, but I don't know what it would be.
Me neither. But,
So the question is, does council want us to seek a traffic engineer who will provide a quote for, or 3 quotes?
Well, I don't think it's a
because
traffic
gonna
engineer.
be-
Let's not go too far down the traffic engineer
I mean,
route.
We've established that that's who
when
we
we
would
do-
need in order to have somebody provide a computer-generated
I've
software
gone through
program.
2 parking lot layouts now. Our architect does that.
Pardon me?
The architect typically does that. They do a single site plan and they lay out the parking.
Urban design
architect?
specialist is who I would, an architect.
I can give you a name of an architect. That
Oh,
would-
any architect does it. I
Yes.
mean, it's they're
Yes,
learning.
cost to an engineer.
Architecture
Charge
301
I
is
think
parking
an
lot design.
architect's gonna be cheaper than an engineer though.
Yeah, but they're going to do it with their CAD program, and it's going to take them 3 hours because it's fairly standard, or 10 hours. I know what the number is.
So we're talking about 1 drawing per parking lot?
We're talking about the scope of work that you see laid out, particularly in respect of page 2 and number 3, and we're talking about the CN lot. So
Well, the CN lot's
getting
already
somebody-
decided. That's been. We're not going to have a guy do it by sucking his thumb, because that's what we did before, and look what happened.
No, I just want to establish what council wants staff to do, and
So
that is
if we're
to
looking
get
at 3
presumably.
drawings, right? 3 CAD drawings for each area? 1 per area roughly, per
Presumably.
parking lot?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I don't know if you'd probably, in number 3, I think you might end up with having to do more than just
Right.
just 1 drawing is not going to cover all of this scope of work.
Oh,
So
I
it's
think-
probably safe to budget anywhere from 2,500 to $4,000 per drawing.
Well, the first one is already covered.
So that's all I'm saying.
That's
That's,
the first
that's
two.
like a budget number, anywhere from 2,400 to $4,000 per CAD drawing
Right.
from a professional, whether an architect or
Yeah.
engineer. That's like the budget number people work.
Okay, so 4 is what I'm talking about for the extra
So-
piece.
So you could be as much as 16,000.
Although I
So, wouldn't we just be, I mean, it sounds like we're all saying pretty much the same thing. The only difference is that we're asking for a plan by a qualified person, so the next step is to go find out what we get.
For what price?
Yeah, what price?
But please, let's get away from this engineer thing. I do not want to ask
I-
on the phone AECOM to do it again, so we end up with a $3,600 power
No,
usage.
There's lots of companies out there that do design work that aren't engineers.
Exactly.
They have CAD programs, they have that stuff, they take the measurements, they send the supervisor out, he does the bid, and that's it, done.
I mean, you guys have both, you've both done this, so, I mean,
Yeah.
how many highways did you do by line of sight, thumb suck, and I guess this is good enough?
Well, we won't talk about that. But yeah, no, you're right.
If you
And-
want,
and-
if that's what you want us to do,
yeah.
No, that's what I want
I
to
got
explicitly not to do.
We work with an architect in Horseshoe Bay who does work throughout the Lower Mainland. They've done lots of parking layouts for us, so I'm happy to pass that along.
Sure,
Everyone's-
that'd be
yeah.
great.
That's good, that makes sense.
Okay, so as to the budget, I don't know. Although some of this has already been budgeted, I'm hearing that the original budget was only $1,500 for the CN lot. I would be prepared to just see a drawing for the Sunset lot, because what we have today is unusable, right? You have to back out all the way down Sunset because they put it in at 45. Maybe that's all that can be done according to parking lot standards.
From my point, council is looking at diligence and saying, we have a responsibility to plan this thing. We're asking somebody to plan it for us, give us a set of drawings, so in the future, when we have to repaint, we've got something we can use, or whatever the case is. As long as the laws or something doesn't drastically change, we should be fine. We're covering our butts. That's all we're doing.
Well, fair enough, and also making the place look like somebody cares.
That's
So,
right.
for example, putting the right lineage around
Exactly.
the fire hall
Yeah.
and the bus stop, which is currently a solid line, meaning don't cross this line. So the recommendations in front of you. I don't know what the number is, but
Well, I think that what we need to do is have a recommendation or a motion that indicates that staff is to go out and seek quotes for providing the
recommended
CAD
requirement.
drawings and layouts, the scope of work that has been set out here, and we'll come back with the
Unqualified
quotes.
individuals.
Okay, I will take it as a given that we're not going to go the AECOM route. We're going to go with the
Any
urban design special.
suggestions? Any suggestions on who to contact would be happily received.
Okay, so we'll take that as, I'll make that motion, seeing as my recommendation. Can I have a second? Thanks, Jim. Any further discussion? Are we ready for that question? I'll call it then. All in favour? And opposed? Huh. Well,
What are you
Okay.
surprised?
I'm normally shut down in flames on these things. Okay. Ron, now we get to talk about the trees, views and landscapes. Let me just apologize to Terry McKilligan. Sorry.
Let's extend the hour here.
Yes, we now need to extend the hour. Can I have a motion to extend, please?
Yeah,
Well, how much would you like?
you're assuming that we're already awake.
1 hour.
1 hour. Motion to extend by an hour. Can I have a second? It's been seconded. All in favor and opposed? That carries.
Good.
Okay, go. Let's move along.
My humor's been taken by, I have showed you the redacted stuff. It's pretty easy. I'd like to say the redacted stuff was all that sexy, but it wasn't. The recommendation of the committee is that for tree application number 85, for 325 Bayview Place, that as requested, the applicant is permitted to chop the specified firs and cedars, all would agree to be removed. Put forward the motion.
So it's been moved, and can I have a second? It's been seconded. Any discussion? I will say this looks like a fairly complicated one. It went back and forth, did it?
It had more off-screen drama than on-street drama.
Yeah, I see that. Perfect. What is the nature of these things that have been redacted?
It's
Pictures you don't want to see.
No, I wish there was pictures, but it's just
Lots of text?
personal exchanges.
Wow. Okay. Okay, so it's on the table. Any further discussion?
I'm just curious. It started off with an arborist of one name, and then another one was switched names. Does that happen before? Not significant.
No.
No. Okay.
Good. Onward.
Ready for the question? All in favour? And opposed? Okay. Okay. We've already seen the fire rescue update, so we've just got the RCMP report on page 137. Can I have a motion to receive it, please? Thanks. And a second? 137. Why am I not finding it? I don't think there's anything I had to remark there. No. We are, as I said, meeting with Inspector Triance on Tuesday, and we'll raise some of the things that I still can't get them to remove that designation within the jurisdiction of Lions Bay for the highway, but it's just cosmetics. Okay, so there's a motion to receive this report that's been seconded. All in favour and opposed? That carries. And we've already discussed the first item under 11. We have a second bylaw to give third reading to, and if third reading, adopt. And that is per the staff recommendation that road closure bylaw number 550 2018 be amended by substituting the attached signed survey plan, and I won't go through the numbers, as attached to the bylaw for the first and second reading, and then be given a third reading. Can I have a motion and a second? Discussion? I had only one question, Peter, and that was as a result of resident correspondence that arose elsewhere that gives rise to what seems to be some confusion what road closure means. Can we, please tell me what page it is on?
237.
237. So I can find my notes. Can we not call it something like road right-of-way closure and disposition?
No. These things are always called road closure.
They are. I know that for.
So it's,
If
we
you're-
had one inquiry, a misconception that was quickly cleared up. I did correspond with her directly right away, and she had no questions as a result. And that was the only concern she had, so.
Okay. To
don't
your
see
average
it.
unwashed non-policy wonk, road closure means you're closing the road.
Closing a portion of the road.
Well, it doesn't say a portion of road closure bylaw. So, yeah, sure. So on the survey that we're attaching to the version that we gave first and second to, where does the roadway, the tarred portion, actually run? How close is it to what this lot will end up being?
So the edge of pavement is what you mean?
Yeah.
Would be a few feet from the boundary of the lot?
A few feet. So no boulevard to speak of for parking purposes.
Not really.
Yeah, but which is
There is a reasonable amount of parking on street on that in that vicinity.
not on the other side. That's one of the few no parking this side
Up the
designations.
block, there's a few.
Here.
No, on this side.
Okay, it's sort of a bit late to, but this is the plot of land. It's 10,000 square feet, 933 square meters, so good size.
A little bit under 10, I think, isn't it?
Well, it's 933 square meters.
Yeah. Well, the reason I note the distinction is because if it was over, then it would be capable of having a cottage, which it won't.
Oh, okay, so it's not quite 10,000 square feet then. Okay, so has this been moved and seconded? I'll just ask for another. So third reading. It has third reading has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Everyone knows what we're doing here. Closing the road, according to the policy one. All in favour? Opposed? That carries. And then I believe that we're within our rights to consider adoption on the same day.
No.
No.
No, this has to be the second.
Oh, this
part
has
of
to go to somebody
This
else.
has to go to Ministry of Transportation.
Yeah, that's right. So what was the second part of the recommendation?
That a certified copy of road closure bylaw 550/2018 as that third reading be sent to the Ministry of Transportation and
Okay,
Infrastructure for approval.
Right. So let's take that as the recommendation. Can I have a motion on that one? Thanks, and a second. Any discussion on that? All in favour and opposed? That carries. And the this is probably what I was thinking of. Adoption of the soil deposit, soil removal, and land alteration bylaw number 510 of 2018. The report's on page 245. Can I have a motion to adopt this bylaw? And it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? The most commonly is not discussion between third reading and adoption, unless anybody's got second thoughts. All in favour then, and opposed? That carries. Sorry, almost there. Correspondence. But before you go there, Ron, I'll ask you to do your normal stalwart job. I just wanted to check something. No. Go ahead.
Good, thank you, Mayor Brewer. From the exterior correspondence and tracking, this is from Kathy Peters, a regular contributor on this topic, and response. R1, which is the resident, this is a friendly exchange.
Oh, this is, sorry, before we, well, it's in the public record now. This was not sent to council originally. How is it? Simply because Councillor McLaughlin requested it?
And forwarded it to all of council.
Yeah, so I guess that makes it, in other words, did the resident intend for this to become part of the public record? Yeah.
He knew where it was going to go when I
Okay.
forwarded it, and exchanges occurred.
Fine.
So we're all good there.
Okay.
Anyhow, to nip to the point, we're on to multiple exchanges between the resident and the CAO, and I'm going to leave it with him to conclude it amicably.
Yep.
And so there we go, R2, which is carted into the public hearing and acknowledged already, no response.
Okay, fine. Motion to receive the correspondence and a second. Any discussion? All in favour? Opposed and carried. And with that, we move to new business. There's one item. Ron.
Yes, thank you. And my ask is that while our term is coming to a close shortly, and talent will be quickly taken away by the many that may choose to use it, my ask, and Peter can make his comment on this, is that if he would reach out to the person we've used for our strategic planning sessions in the past, and perhaps see if a couple dates could be arranged, and it can be out there in after the people are sitting, or so it could be late November, early December. My sense is that I couldn't predict who's going to be on the next council, but I certainly wish that I'd had someone doing this for me when I started 2 terms ago. And because I suspect this person's popular, if we could get our dime in early, that'd be great.
This is the consultant.
The consultant, and my thinking is that by September, from I think the 14th, when the nominations close, whoever is there could be apprised of what that date might be, so that they can clear their calendars for a month and a half or 2 months out.
Well, I like the idea. My only question is, would we not want to schedule it for after the LGMA,
Which is
School.
usually held when?
beginning of January?
Yeah, and it may be that date-wise, that might be what we end up with.
Anyway. in
You know,
terms of-
using Carl's comment, if you knew what that was, because I guess they would know now.
The
Yeah.
new councillor school.
Yeah, the council 101,
What's it? It's a 3-day thing, or was it? I can't remember now. Was it 5 days?
2 days.
It was a 2-day session.
Yeah.
Extremely valuable.
So I'll,
You can
Peter,
get
if
it,
you
yeah.
could, next,
Yep.
next session, I'm gonna do this as carry forward, unfinished business. And so you can update us there, what your thoughts are.
Fine. Okay. So no motion.
Nope.
Fine. Public questions and comments. Why is it taking so long?
And it's those pesky people that keep turning up and. All right,
Okay, motion to close the council meeting under 91A, C, E, F, I, J, and K, please. There's a motion and a second. All in favor, opposed, carried. The meeting is now proceeding to... Okay, so we're returning out of closed session at 11:42 p.m., that is, on Tuesday still, having duly extended the meeting within the closed section. Several items to report out. I'll ask Sierra Zhang to run through them succinctly.
Firstly, there's an extension of the listing agreement with Tara McKilligan for the property that the municipality is selling at 52 Brunswick Beach for a period of 3 months to November 15th, I believe. Well, 3 months is the extension. And a test for the expenditure of reserve funds under Section 41 of the Community Charter with respect to the sale of lands that provide access to the water has been adopted by council and will be put up as policy on the website as soon as possible. An amendment was made, a further amendment was made to the temporary use policy, temporary use permit policy for short-term rentals, and that will be, the consolidated version of that will be put up on the website. And a special meeting has been set for Thursday, July 26th at 4 p.m. For council to consider matters related to the next round of grant funding.
Very good, thank you. That satisfy our reporting out from closed? I think it does, thank you. Okay, with that I'll ask for a motion to adjourn and a second. All in favour, opposed, that carries. Meeting adjourned.